Can you say if we're live? So we got live. Okay, thank you.
Kelly, did you hit the wall?
Oh, yeah, but you didn't mean which way. You stayed with you can find a chair and walk bring one in.
Just stand and wait. We're gonna sit the whole time.
Custer County Board of County Commissioners meeting will come to order. Let the record show that today is November the 7th, 2019. The time is 9:00 a.m. Mr. Legree, would you do the honor of leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance, sir?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. I think there's a court docket today, isn't there?
No. Well, actually, Thursday they usually do one, but I didn't see anybody down there.
I'm wondering, we've got some chairs out here in the hallway. I hate to have you folks stand. It's gonna get old here because we've got some stuff to go through on our agenda before we get to you. So trust me when I say it's my opinion that you're more than welcome to, we can just fill this space in here with some chairs if you guys want. If we're good for now and you want to do it later, I don't have a problem with that either.
And they can come and go.
Yeah, certainly. If you want to go out there and sit for a little bit and come back in, you're welcome. I mean, no problem. So, Madam Clerk of the Board, would you conduct the roll, please?
Commissioner Flowers.
Present.
Commissioner Campbell.
Here.
Commissioner Prince.
Present.
Attorney Clint Smith.
Present.
Clerk to the Board Kelly Camper present.
Thank you, ma'am. I would say, because we have more people than normal in the room, number one, I would ask that if you have not, if you would silence your cell phones. Number two, I would also inform you, and you probably know this, we do live stream our Board of County Commissioner meetings. The camera is right up there on that wall. It will pick up everything from about the back of that chair forward, I guess, probably. Yeah. So, the reason this monitor is here is because it also serves as the microphone for our live streaming. So,
I thought it was to check my hair.
yeah, and it's not to check your hair. So anyhow, I just want you to know that
Good.
these meetings are live streamed. So you're welcome to move around, come up and sit down, or whatever, because it's going to be a little bit. Audience introductions.
I'm
We'll
also
pass it
gonna
around.
pass
How's
this
that?
around because I'm never gonna catch it.
Because it's hard to get all the spelling, it's hard to hear, so if you don't mind, we'll just do
And
that.
if you could print so that, because sometimes when you write, I can't get.
Your names will be recorded in the minutes as attending the meeting, so we appreciate that. So I think, gentlemen, if you're okay while we're doing that, we'll move on. Is that all right? I don't think we need to sit here and wait for that list to be passed all the way around. Amendments to the agenda. Commissioner Prince?
No, I have none. I was thinking maybe we ought to move the agenda around a little bit to accommodate all the folks who came to visit with us, but I see it's we only have like 2 new items anyways, so I think we're okay.
Great. Commissioner Canada?
Yeah, we might think about at least moving the Colonel Birdie one up.
I was gonna move to do that myself, but if one of you feel,
I'll move it up so we can get them on the docket quicker.
okay. Been moved and seconded to move the item of business concerning the roads.
HOA request concerning roads.
Yes, above the PILT request. Is that your understanding? That's what your intent was? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Motion carries. So let the record show that we have reversed those 2 items. Give me just a second here. Want to welcome everybody today. Thank you guys for being here. Sometimes we feel like nobody cares about county government.
Sometimes you're right.
Thank you for that polite little laugh. That's good. But we do appreciate you being here. Thank you. I don't believe we have any minutes to approve. We met yesterday. I have nothing new on Upper Ark, gentlemen.
I don't need.
Attorney items.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I'm working on that motion we talked about based
Okay.
on the report that was given by the advisory group or committee that was working with the hospital district on the ambulance issue. And I'll have a proposed motion for you for our meeting on December 13th. Kelly told me this morning, and one of the things we had talked about was how you do away with that mill levy for the ambulance service. That 3%, in fact, that's where we go eventually. And she thinks that it's not something that goes on the ballot, it may actually need to be a court issue. I'm gonna call Dennis Hunt, I just got the number from Jay, and I'll get his input, and I'll do some checking, and I can report on that also next Wednesday. And then the other thing we talked about yesterday was the Brad Huff suggestion that we switch to LED lighting for the parking lot on the east. I did as president of Dark Skies, I did an email vote, and it was unanimous from our board of directors that we offer to pay the whole amount.
Oh, wow.
And I said up to $600, but I'm
Okay.
sure if it goes beyond that, we're not gonna have any problem with the extra either.
Perfect.
So that's taken care of.
Do you want me to follow up with him?
If you would please, just
Yeah.
tell them the Dark Skies will pick up the tab and.
Yeah, I think my calendar's in my briefcase, but that's all right. Perfect, okay. Commissioner Prince?
Can I suggest that we ask Kara to write a thank you note to Dark Skies for recent?
That's a great suggestion. Yeah,
Wait
let
till
me
you see the money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
After we get
Show me the money.
that's a great idea, thank you, sir. Yeah, I will contact Mr. Huff and, let him know that we're good to go there. Thank
If
you.
he has any questions, he talks to Jim Bradburn mostly about
Okay.
some of the details, but I wanna make sure he knows what the lights are that we need.
Right. And then I wanted to ask you a question about your draft and the language of that. So if you bring that language, I don't have any idea what kind of time investment you're gonna have on that, but it's a loaded question, I guess. You're not gonna be offended if we look at that and go, well, that's not really what we were talking about.
No, this is just
I
something
mean,
to
that's
work off.
okay.
It's a draft, right?
Yeah, good.
And I'll get it to you ahead of time, so you can all,
Okay,
I won't just spring it on you next Wednesday.
yeah.
But it's just a
Yeah, I think
suggestion.
I would appreciate some time to digest whatever that language is going to be, and
And some of it is based on the two suggestions I made, the conditions that I thought should be attached to it, so.
okay.
It'll be in writing and you can pick it apart and use it, any part of it if you want, throw it all out.
Or email it to us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll email it to all of you.
Okay. Anything else, sir?
No, that's it.
All right, thank you. Admin assistant, anything back yonder? Okay. Public comment, we have this public comment three places on our agenda. So we believe as commissioners that folks ought to have the ability to have comments to us early in the agenda, instead of having to sit here for an entire meeting to say something that we've already voted on. We just think that's ludicrous. We also believe that if we get ready to vote on any what we call action items, that the public has a right to have input on those specifically, because if we put, let's say for example, our item concerning the roads, if you don't have an opportunity to enter into some discussion after you've heard our thoughts or whatever, then we think that's an unfair advantage. So during new business items, I will ask if there's any public comment prior to taking a vote on those. And then there's also a public comment section at the end of the agenda as well. So I've sat in a lot of meetings very frustrated because conversations started going in a certain direction, and I've sat there for an hour and a half wanting to address the situation, never had the opportunity. So we'll talk about that a little more when we get to that item on the agenda. We'll kind of spell that out a little clearer. But if there's anybody that has a public comment about anything not on the agenda, now would be a great time for us to hear that.
It can be anything that's been bugging you or something that you want to make a comment or even ask a question. We've had people come in asking for some advice, where to go to get something done.
Okay, good. All right, we'll move on. Staff reports. Airport, you're first up. One or both, you're more than welcome. Come forward. Fly on up here, as Mr. Canada might say.
That's what it is. Say, Bob.
Good morning, sir. How are you? Good to see you. What about your henchman? You bringing him or not?
I'll stand right.
Okay.
He's there to cover the door.
Don't let Bob out. Don't let Bob out of here.
If we're not leaving if you don't get what you want, kind of deal. All right, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Feeling okay?
Yes.
Good, good, glad to hear. So, all right, let's get, I don't think we had a report ahead of time, did we?
No.
The floor is yours, sir.
Okay, in October, we sold 390 gallons. We decided several years ago that if we get down to 250, we're gonna stop sales because it gets lower than that.
Just not worth it.
Yeah, and it takes a long time to get it cleaned, so, we didn't get anywhere close to there. We got a load of fuel on the 31st of October, and we were down to 258 gallons.
Wow. So you've been moving some fuel, but
We've been moving some fuel.
how big was that load? 8?
2.
2.
A split load out of Pueblo or something, pretty cheap.
Out of Pueblo.
So they didn't charge us.
No, we did get charged because the whole load was less than 8. It was 7. So, we're gonna have to, at our next, airport meeting, we're gonna have to decide on whether to order more often or more fuel. And I'm of the opinion it should be more fuel.
Yeah, cut down the number of loads to have to pay
Yes,
for.
well,
Well, it's
not
costing more overhead.
Yeah, it's not only that, but it's harder to get somebody to split with us, and if we got more, maybe it would be a little bit easier for them to split with us.
Would it make sense to increase the capacity of our fuel to save money rather than split loads?
It certainly would, but we cannot take, right now, we can't take a full load of fuel.
In fact, we're
How
gonna
big the
discuss
tank
the
currently?
size of the tank.
6,000,
6.
which means we can only take 5,400.
So we could take 2.5 times more than we did this load
Well, yeah,
to fill it, but gotta pay for it and you gotta be able to sell it. So,
that's
I mean, if we had
correct.
a 20,000 gallon tank out there, it probably wouldn't do us a whole lot of good unless
No.
we had a ton of money to go buy that much fuel.
Not only
And
that,
sell it.
but then you gotta sell it within a
Right.
certain period.
That's where I was going.
Yes.
You can't just let it sit.
You can't just let it sit.
Okay.
We have a policy, and so does World Fuel, of, we gotta add fuel every 9 months. There are some airports in the area that don't abide by that policy.
Just to keep it fresh.
Yes, they'll go 2 years.
Wow.
I guess Daysville doesn't work in here.
No,
Good, okay?
unless you got,
We
you
got
gotta have a 55
10,000 gallons of stable.
But anyway, right now, so far this month, we've sold about 125 or so. We're gonna have to increase our fuel price a little bit. I did check this morning to see what the average price is. And right now it's $4.67, so we're gonna try to keep ours right about there. If we went with the 50 plus the 1.335%, it would be 169. So I think I'm gonna try to keep it at 467. Mr. Legree's hangar is just about done. We got the apron poured Monday, and just waiting on the doors for it, and they should be in next week.
Apron poured to his hangar.
Yes,
Concrete.
the concrete apron. Otto's hangar's sort of on hold. Apparently, the doors don't fit.
Those big doors,
The big doors don't fit.
they miscalculated, didn't they?
Well, that's a long story. Somebody keeps changing their mind on what they wanna do. They did it, it didn't work. So I don't know what he's gonna do with those doors, but they don't fit. We did get the courtesy car. We just got the quote, just got the bill today. I just got handed it just a few minutes ago from Gallagher on the insurance.
That's what he quoted though, yeah, roughly.
24,
Yeah.
25.
25.
We're ready to start using those courtesy cars, except for one thing, the forms that we sent y'all to be approved. One of the things that was on that form was insurance cards, insurance policy numbers. And we got to thinking about it a little bit, and who carries around their insurance card in their wallet? Most people keep it in their vehicle. So we're trying to figure out what we're gonna do about getting insurance numbers. I don't know what we're gonna do with that. The last load that we got in July, we got charged twice for it. I mean, we didn't get charged twice, it was paid twice. We talked about this a couple meetings ago.
Yeah.
And I talked to the folks at World Fuel several weeks ago about it, and they said it would be okay for us to use it as a credit. So when we got this load of fuel, I got the bill the other day, and they charged us full price with no credit on there. So I called the people that sent the bill, and she said, no, everything's fine, everything's a different date, and so on and so forth. And I was furious when I went to bed last night. And I got up this morning and had a nice email from the accounting department.
Sorry, sir.
They said, yes, indeed, we
Yeah.
did pay for it twice.
Good.
They sent me a form to attach to this
bill?
month's bill,
Good.
with this bill, so
Perfect.
that's all taken care of.
Good.
So that's about it.
Okay,
Y'all
do
got
you wanna deal with this, car insurance paperwork now?
your cue?
I'll show this to you, gentlemen.
Should be able to get it in time too.
Yes, $2,545.
Yeah, and I'm assuming once this paperwork is signed and sent, then they'll invoice you, or is that the invoice?
That's
So
the
you did
invoice.
get the invoice, okay, so that'll need to go to Miss Donna if we
Yes.
approve this.
Yes, and I'm gonna talk to Donna and let her know what's going on with the fuel right after this. I'm also gonna talk to her about some insurance paperwork to get with Kit Shy.
Yeah, you've already started that conversation with
No,
her.
I
You
haven't.
haven't yet?
No,
Okay.
I'm gonna do that right after this.
Okay, so back to this car insurance.
cars.
Cars, yeah, you have keys and plates on both of those?
Yes.
Keys for and plates on both.
They're old cars, are they safe?
Yes. Well, we got a few things that I'd like to get fixed before we start, on one of them in particular. The rear view mirror fell off on the way.
Yeah, that,
Which side, it doesn't matter.
About tires. What did we have?
The tires on one probably need to be replaced, but they're good enough to get
Good
back and
insurance.
back and forth to town.
yeah, Road and Bridge went through them. Obviously, they couldn't predict a mirror falling off. I'm sure they didn't grab it and
One's
see if it
18
was
years
scary.
old, one's 17-year-old
That's
car,
right.
and I'm thinking the insurance is probably more than the car's value. However, that's not what we're insuring. We're insuring a catastrophe.
Yes.
I get it.
Chair would entertain a motion concerning the insurance.
So I move that we accept and approve the payment for the airport courtesy cars.
I'll second it.
So moved and seconded to approve the insurance payment for the courtesy cars at the airport. Discussion. I have a question. Do you believe both of these need to be signed at the bottom as well as the cover letter?
My question would be, who signs that? Is it the airport board or is it us or?
The county's insurance, so it would be the county.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I see yes.
Sign all three of that.
And did you notice on that other page, that chafing?
I
film?
did
So I
notice
don't know
that,
if
and
just
That's
letters.
I think it was a typo.
Yeah,
They did that
I,
in the last stuff they sent.
So I don't know if you want to scratch that out and put Custer.
you're gonna take this paperwork over to Donna?
Yes.
Okay, because certainly we don't have the, federal employees identification number here. I may have it in my briefcase, but I doubt it, so. Council, you wanna take a quick look at these while we're Oh, yeah, FEIN's federal employers ID. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a limitation on how far somebody can take one of those cars?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's within the county.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah, they provided us with a packet of that when we went through all this. I couldn't have quoted that to you exactly, but I didn't think there was a mileage limit, it was
There's
just
not a
within the
mileage
county.
limit, it's within the county.
Good to know.
No cruising to Steamboat Springs.
And you know, you bring up, your question, raises a question for me. I wonder if we should consider putting the courtesy car policies on the website so that people were gonna fly in here, they could look that up. Number one, to know that it's available. Number two, to go, oh, well, we were hoping to drive that down to Canyon for lunch.
Yeah.
I guess we can't.
We're gonna put all this on our website.
Put the request for their insurance.
Yeah, well, that can be on there too, but, how many people are gonna
They
go right
expect to
here?
write it down here. I
That
mean, just tell them
didn't
to bring it
actually
with
do
them.
that. Yeah,
If it doesn't happen, we'll deal with it.
yeah.
Yeah, so,
You can get it after the fact.
and your website's tied to the county website, so we should be good there. But yeah, you talked with Vern about that. But I think the entire policy packet ought to be on there for them. Other discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We will sign these real quick. And then if you would ask Donna to fill in the rest of this,
I can do that.
that would be great. Well, hopefully this will get us up and running, huh?
Yes, sir, yep. And we've got the signs ready to go on the side of the vehicle.
Oh, nice, good. Perfect. All right, sir, anything else come before the board?
No.
Anything else, Mr. Vaughn? One other thing I just wanted to let you know, thank you, is that we had a discussion with Mr. Hyder, Road and Bridge Supervisor, yesterday about moving some material over to
Yes.
fill in the low spot.
He got a hold of him.
We've talked to him.
We talked to him, and we're gonna meet him out there this afternoon.
Perfect. All right, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Lynn.
Yeah.
Okay, Sergeant, as long as you can release the pool.
All right.
She's here.
Did you get hold of her?
Yeah, she's here. She was
All right.
looking at a piece of paper.
Thank you. Yeah, Office of Emergency Management's our next staff report, so we'll wait for just a second for Miss Meredith to come in.
So sorry.
She went the wrong way.
I didn't get my paper. How's it
Good
going?
morning, good, how are
Good
you?
morning.
Same, Meredith.
How are you, kiddo?
How are you
Good.
guys?
Feeling okay?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
So,
Hey.
money-wise, so far, we've gotten the reimbursement from the security fence from the
Nice.
Homeland Security, so that's all squared away and good.
How much was this?
So I think it was 30, it's almost 30,000. It's like
20
28, 29
Yeah, I
something.
think 27.9 or 28.2, something
Yeah,
like
something like that, yeah. So that's good. And all of the, stuff for the EMPG grant that funds my department squared away for this year. So that'll be good. We don't have to worry about that.
Is that already been approved, or is that something that gets approved?
Yeah, so that was approved for this
Yeah.
year, last month.
Right, we
Just
signed
November,
that
yeah,
EMPG.
yeah. And then, now I'm working towards for next year, because it's never ending cycle. So, yeah, good.
Good.
A couple things that I've started doing is Did You Know posts. And so, each week I'll start doing a kind of informational thing for the public on our Facebook page to show what programs we have, plans in place, just so that people can know what's happening and, yeah. So that'll be really good.
So it ties in with your trip to the school.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's really good.
What's the name of the Facebook page?
So it's just the emergency management Facebook page. So last week I did all the Facebook pages that we have for our emergency services, and that's the best place to get the information if we have road closures and things like that. So just trying to spread that out. And then kind of started a new structure for our CES group, which I'm really excited about. It kind of turned into a meeting just for a meeting, which is not something I really enjoy. So
Join the club.
right. So what I've done is create kind of subgroups within our CES main group. So we'll have a core planning team that gets together and creates kind of a long-term, short-term goals to fill our gaps that we have within our community or what we see, and then work towards those things. So, and we started with the list of plans that we have, and half the people in the room didn't even know we had those plans. And so, training now, writing those plans, updating those plans, and now training on those so that we can actually be ready and working towards something. So that'd be really good.
I know those ladies in public health, very impressed.
Well, that's good.
They see light at the end of the tunnel. Very appreciative of your work.
Good, that's good to hear. And then I did the career day at the high school, which was really cool. There was a student really interested in the mentorship program. So if y'all are okay with that, I can go down that route. It would just be a couple hours a day through the week, talking through emergency management. That would be help for me. Yeah, just kind of growing up.
I think it's great. My opinion.
Yeah. So that'd be really good.
Good.
If y'all are okay with that one.
Yeah, I think so. long as it doesn't get to eaten up in an order
Correct,
amount of
yeah,
time.
yeah, and she'll
Certainly
be helpful in
control
that too, in,
Got a time frame.
so I would have to, I've been given the paperwork to start the stuff,
Spring
so I'm
sometime.
thinking next semester, yeah.
Grade level, do you know?
She's a junior? Yeah.
Okay, good.
So, yeah. And then Alex has been really helpful, saving me a lot of work.
Can we talk about that arrangement a little bit?
Sure.
I can't remember exactly how we fleshed out the finances and the
For
time
this
for
year?
Alex, yeah.
So, all of it's being paid out of, GIS IT. He's getting 3 days with Vernon and then 2 days with me. And then, if there's a bigger project on either side, then we flex that. But
Full
he's,
days you're talking about.
yeah, but he's been doing, so he's created, basically EOC computers, emergency operations center computers, so that, we'll have set things in place, we don't have to go scrounging around each other's computers trying to find things, and so that's really good. And so he's doing work kind of that blends into the, both of our departments, which is nice, and so, it's been really good.
I know this will sound ignorant, did we fund that full-time position?
Yeah, so, was it last month?
They're sharing.
Yeah, last month, just for, through the, end
But
of
through this year, it's not being shared, it's GIS.
It's GIS until,
yeah.
Okay, good.
so we're sharing the whole cost.
Yeah, we're sharing the entire cost,
Yeah,
which we would anyway, really, I mean, the county.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
General fund,
Yeah,
okay. And you met with Corner Verde
correct.
on the CWPP?
For the request for the film funding.
And you're gonna be here later to talk about that, so we don't need to go through that
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Tell me about the fence that you're getting funding for.
The,
Fence.
oh, no,
Security.
so it was a security fence around the sheriff's office, so it was just that reimbursement.
That chain link fence that they installed this
Yeah, I
summer.
knew that.
Yeah.
I thought that was a sheriff grant.
Yes, but, so,
Yeah, but.
yes, but, it was through Homeland Security grant, and so that budget line is through emergency management.
Got it.
And so,
Got it. Okay.
they can do projects throughout the county for whatever it is, but that's the budget line. that
Comes through you.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I really just kind of sums up, other than just the normal kind of trainings and other things.
Thanks for keeping the fires out of Custer County.
Yeah, I'm trying really hard.
Doing a good job there.
So the timing on the coroner's vehicle, you think,
Oh, next
Yeah,
year.
I mean,
Yeah,
timing would be early in the year, mid-year?
probably mid-year. It'd probably be the same timing that was the security fence within that frame. Would be what that would look like.
What was $147 for?
So that was the
It's nice of them to cover.
right. So the
but
mini
did
grant
they not give
for
it now?
corner radios. So he had the radios and then some add-on
Extras.
features or whatever.
Too many extra features.
Yeah, and so they decided that they covered the extra, which is nice.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
very good. Anything else, ma'am?
Don't think so.
Well, thank
There
you.
is an interest for a internship in the summer. It would be unpaid, kind of how I started. Yeah. So it's a student. She's grew up here, going to college for emergency services, and she'll be back for this summer. And so it would be maybe a couple days a week, and just kind of.
You're getting all kinds of help.
Yeah, I am very thankful.
Vehicle's okay?
Yeah, so I had Alex look at tires, and so we'll get those soon. I'm going to talk to Road and Bridge and how they do that, and just go through that process
Right.
with them.
Yeah.
And then, which will be fine within the budget for this year, so that'll be good. And I've been driving it around, especially when it was cold, so the batteries
Good.
didn't freak out or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything else is pretty good.
Okay, well, we appreciate
moving
your work. It's,
quickly. Yeah, oh, there is the CES meeting I changed to November 12th, because on the 21st and 22nd, we have that fatality management workshop. And I didn't want to load down a week full of meetings and trainings.
What
And
time?
so 2 to 4 on the 12th. And that would be a really good one to go to, because I'm going to be presenting the new structure for the CES group and get the kind of feel for what they were thinking, so.
But the CES is the 21st and 22nd.
No, so the 21st and 22nd is the fatality management
That's
workshop.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Got it.
so that's our mass casualty plan and working through that.
We have some conflicts that
Yeah.
day
Gotcha.
with the courthouse.
Oh, yeah. So the 12th would be, if y'all can make that one.
Yeah, and I will
That's the
not, I'm
CES meeting.
flying out that day.
Yeah, I'll be there.
You'll be able to attend from the 12th,
I'll be
as far
there
as you know,
on the
okay,
12th.
I will not.
You know, regular ones that have not been regular at.
Yeah, and then, we'll all three be in Denver on the 21st, so.
Okay.
Should we try to come on the 22nd, is it gonna be joining
No,
the deal
so
in the
I think
middle
we'll have
of-
some really good turnout from the
I
agency.
just really don't wanna be part of your mass casualty.
No?
Okay. I'll be a part of the meetings.
But just not,
Yeah.
okay, sorry.
All
I
right,
guess I can arrange that.
very good, thank you, ma'am, appreciate it.
Thanks, Meredith.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate you coming over.
Definitely, we'll see you later for the.
Yes, yes.
Hey guys, there's some fritters back there and some cream cheese croissants. Meredith might even find some coffee.
Ooh, deal.
Okay, gentlemen, next up is public health. I spoke with our public health director, Alyssa Livegood, on the phone. Did you have a question real quick, or are you okay?
No,
All right. So she sent us her report. She is en route to a doctor's appointment to follow up on her shoulder surgery this morning. She did volunteer to call in, and I told her I thought we had a report. I didn't really feel like it was necessary, but if you do, I can certainly try to get it on the phone. Yeah, again, you know, we had a chance to look at it, so, I didn't see, I mean, obviously, she puts a note in here that she's been out some. For the audience's benefit, our public health director, Alyssa Livegood, got bucked off a horse a couple weeks ago, completely shattered, didn't shatter, but it completely disjointed her collarbone from her shoulder. We saw the x-rays, it was ugly. And broke her thumb,
On different hands.
right and left.
And injured her pride.
So, she's been out for a little bit, so she obviously has told us that she hasn't been in the office as much as she normally would be. But, she's coming back now at least a few hours a day, to keep things caught up, so. And then I mean, just the rest of it's kind of just her update on the number of flu shots, and I think they're having another clinic Saturday, yes.
At the school at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
They also just recently received shingles vaccines, so people are interested in this, they're like pricey, but they just got them. So, scheduled.
Yeah.
So,
Other neat thing she's doing, she's working on a commercial on anti-vaping with the high school work-study guys.
yeah, she's doing a great job.
We've got 8 vaping problems here.
Yep. So that's kinda, I'm satisfied with her report, gentlemen.
I'm good.
Okay, perfect, I will let her know. We will move on, human resources and finance, Ms. Donna, good morning.
This is what everybody's here for.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Checks.
food, I know, that will be, that's just kidding. It's a lot warmer in here with all these.
Yeah.
Saving on heat today.
That's right.
Bill.
I have resolutions, handwritten,
Right.
handwritten report, and dedicated services.
Okay, so maybe do,
Yeah, which I know,
no, you tell us what you want to do, and then we'll go from there. Sorry, I just happen to have those in my hand, so,
and all of it's your call, so.
doesn't matter.
I have my resolutions for
Okay.
supplementals.
Let's do that first then. opportunity to look at those.
So the only question I had, the Verdmont Tower service twice, is that
And they
covering
just
2
happened to
months, or
got
they
the,
just
it
come
was 2
in?
months, they just happened to get the bill, or I was actually later this month than I am usually, so it managed to get
So
to
that's
them.
running around $2,400 a year.
And that is the spot that I bill other entities for. I do every,
Oh, and that
twice
one
a
too?
year, yes, I add that into the, that's, I think it costs every entity about $1,500 a year, because we all divide that.
Okay.
So you wanna do handwrittens first?
No, I'm sorry, I just, that caught my attention when I started talking.
I would move that we approve resolutions 1912, 1913, and 1914, and I'll elaborate a little bit, for fund balance transfers. It's been moved and seconded to approve resolutions 1912, 1913, and 1914 concerning the fund balance transfers of road and bridge, self-insurance, and conservation trust fund in that order. Discussion?
No, this was a hefty amount for the road bridge. I think it was $125,000.
Yeah. Which we talked about in that budget.
That's coming out of where, to where?
Well, as it reads here, it's coming out of the fund balance, but they received extra, so it was deposited into the fund balance, so actually it's a wash.
So we're not dipping into the fund for this, right? It's
Yes.
just an in and an out.
Yes,
Got it. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
yes, that is it.
We have referred to it as a windfall, but that's where
So windfall, in and a windfall.
yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
And,
That was my only question. I saw it's fairly heavy.
right. Yeah. And then the conservation trust fund, we must have had a request for that, oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that goes.
Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of approving the 3 resolutions as mentioned, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We'll sign those babies.
When, you know the date, and if you don't know, it's fine. When do we actually sign the budget that we approved the other day?
The 5th, 6th, or 7th of December, and I'm not sure which date it is, it's right
That's fine.
there.
That's
For a
fine.
hard
I
day's
didn't
a
mean
good
to
one.
put you on the
On there.
spot. I
Well,
just
and
knew
see,
it
that's
was
my birthday
coming
as
up.
well, so I know it's right by there.
The 7th is a Saturday, so it probably won't be there.
Well, we'll come here.
Oh, there you go.
Just make
Everybody's
us
buying
dedicated
dinner or
employees.
something,
We'll
you
be
know.
No big deal.
I'll be on that one.
Thank you, sure.
Yeah, that's right. Coming down on a Saturday, yeah.
Okay,
And I need to kill
on.
minutes. And then, I wanted to ask if the commissioners would be willing to do the dedicated service for the employees this year.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's see, that was in an email, wasn't it?
I
Oh, did
brought
you?
them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I say, I'll dig it out, but,
Go ahead. I remember it. I don't have it in front of me.
On there, I just.
I had one major issue though with it, just one. I was really in favor, except there was one employee that was excluded, and I don't know why.
There's a reason, it's because it's contingent upon someone's budget having the money, and mine does not. So that's,
okay.
but you know, if.
We can vote on another fund.
But that is why that,
Fund
but
transfer.
that people
I
have
think
to.
the
Sounds like
only
another
one in the
transfer.
county that would, employee in the county that would be excluded from it.
I'm going
Were you handing that
to
to
say
me, or were you just
yes,
saying
but I wouldn't know
So you
that.
look at it? Unless you
You
have
know,
that
if somebody
email.
did not have enough money, that's the part where you guys say
I
that
got
they
mine, so
cannot
you
have
have
it if you didn't have enough.
Mr. Chairman, I have a major problem with that.
Well,
Okay.
it's probably 10 years running, so it's no
I
worries.
understand it was wrong last year, it's wrong this year again, and it's not appropriate.
Okay. 11-4, correct?
Two in the
It's allergies that people are sniffing. It has nothing to do with being sick.
Unless you're all put down with something, and then I guess he was. That's, we know who.
I could raise a petition, I want people to have, everybody's sick of the word, I'm not.
I would move that we approve the dedicated service as presented and include out of the commissioner's budget, dedicated service for human resource finance department.
I second that motion.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded
It's okay.
to approve, I'm not sure I should say amended, but revised, we didn't amend it. The revised dedicated service discussion.
And that will put my budget over, because it has to come out of mine, so that you know.
It has to come out of your budget?
Because it's on, because the auditors make it that I have to attach that to people's.
That's okay, because we're
Can we
just
transfer money
supplemented.
from the
Sure.
commissioner's budget to your budget?
It would actually be waived, I would just rather not have it for that kind of hassle of doing all that,
This
honestly.
is just not right, young lady.
Wait a minute, you're training Kara, she can do it.
There you go. She can have the whole thing, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think I get what you're saying, it's easy for us to sit in here and say stuff and vote on stuff. It's gotta make sense, and it's gotta be,
But that would be pulling it out, so, but it would show my budget as being over at the end on my bottom line, rather than sitting over.
Why can't we get a check out of it?
that's what I'm thinking, that, let's handle that in a different.
We'll do it differently, but we're gonna do it.
Yeah, so, I would restate my motion to approve the dedicated service, proposal as presented. Second's okay with that?
Well, just a second on that, because we've already said we put her in there. I think it's just a mechanism of how we transfer
Right,
the money.
so I'm
why
gonna
don't we
separate
vote on
those out into two
Oh, you're
different
gonna do it,
motions.
okay.
Yeah,
We
your
do
seconds,
together.
okay.
I'm fine if you can do the two
Yeah,
motions.
yeah, that was my intent, sorry, I should have said that.
I second.
Further discussion?
Is that bonuses? Is that what that is?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Further discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye, opposed nay. Motion carries. I would then move that the commissioners dedicate, I don't know, we'll have to let Dawn figure out the exact amount, but the dedicated service for, human resource and finance department out of the, community outreach.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to, authorize dedicated service for public, human resource and finance out of the commissioner's community outreach budget. Discussion?
At the same percentage that.
Yes,
the other-
Sure.
whatever that
We
means.
have to calculate it.
Yeah, there's a
That's
scale.
fine,
That's a
as
good
long
one.
as it's consistent, I'm fine.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. Motion carries.
Well,
Thank
why
you,
would we
ma'am.
do that?
What'd you think of that?
Community outreach.
Just leave that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay,
Is there no heat in your office, Don, or is it just a cold walk over here?
Oh, it's hot and cold, it's when the door
got-
opens, as
yeah,
long as no one
shirt,
opens the
coat.
door when your desk is that far from the door, it's, but now it's really
Oh wait, for
warm.
those of you who don't know, her home is in the jail, old jail, so the walls are cold.
okay, then, handwrittens, do you wanna do that next, or,
And I have not sent that to the newspapers, at this point. I did look at it, you read it?
Oh, you're struggling,
And
I'll
I
move, we
didn't
accept
send
her
it to any of
handwritten,
you,
and
so I
then,
just brought the paper
Oh,
copy.
okay.
then we can discuss it, you can share.
we haven't seen this.
No, that was like 25 seconds ago.
Yeah, okay, got it.
She answered my questions, so we.
Is it black? Is that what it is? A handwritten check? It's just when it comes in.
It just does not make the cut for the end of month bill pay.
I have no issues here.
Chair would entertain a motion.
I move that we accept and sign the handwritings.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the handwrittens to the total, in the total amount totaling $10,423.45. Discussion. Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed nay. Motion carries.
So, as a side note,
10,000.
I'm gonna call it outside the system as opposed to handwritten, since demonstrated.
Yeah, that's true.
Not that I care.
Should be hand signed then, huh? Yeah. What else, Ms. Donovan?
That's it. Yeah. 5 trees, 5 signatures, 10.
Did you hear Commissioner Prince's comments? These are not handwritten checks, they're printed checks, they
Oh.
happen to be hand signed checks.
Oh.
I
Manually
was gonna
signed.
say the other comment I made, they just slapped me on.
No.
Donna, what was the total? 10,000,
Sorry, I kinda
423, 45.
went through that in a hurry. And I speak on behalf of the commissioners. I really appreciate your work in doing this because we have cleaned up a process here that was
And it worked on the first month, we'll see how well.
good.
Good job.
Oh, I can never guess. It's like blood down.
All right, ma'am, thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Chin
Let me help
is
you up
gone.
here. Oh,
No, the
okay.
chin's
Got you
gone.
pinned in.
It's not that old age hip knee thing.
Well, it could be that too.
I'm fighting the knee thing today for some reason. I don't know what that's all about.
Gentlemen, I need to suggest that we really need a microphone here for when somebody's speaking, cause I'll bet nobody past the first row could hear any of what was going on. And sometimes not Jay.
Audio.
I sometimes have trouble hearing.
Yeah, I was
I
having a
can't
little
hear-
trouble hearing
I
everything.
can't hear Gary at all.
You know, Gary,
Yeah,
he
okay,
whispers.
good point. We'll work on that. We will see, yeah, I think,
That's burning.
Is that gonna go with the new table? Is it gonna be built in?
you know,
Right.
Counselor, just about, let me say this quietly so the audience, I've not had it with you on that table. Oh, you can hear.
This is my table. I'd
This
like
is
one
a-
where I can sit up with the grown-ups.
I don't wanna say it's a long-running thing, cause it hasn't been all that long since I said I'd build us a new table. Council has, been very diligent about reminding me of that statement, which,
Right, Miss Guinevere.
come here, ma'am, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good?
She speaks loud.
Yes.
Not really. Hi, how are you?
Good morning.
Hey,
Good
good
morning.
morning.
Uh,
Yes.
I'd like to introduce you. Only because she's relatively new. This is Guinevere Nelson. She is our extension director upstairs for 4-H extension, CSU extension, sorry.
Are you guys all
Also,
here for this?
We're here just for that.
Start passing the hat for 4-H.
Y'all from Oklahoma just in on vacation. Yeah, if you need anything from extension, this is your person.
Nice to meet you.
Good morning, how are you?
Good morning, good, how are you?
Doing good, yep.
I know I got this to your packets late.
It's okay.
So I apologize.
But we got it.
for that.
We got it.
I got it early yesterday.
Yeah, so.
I don't know why.
Okay, so, pretty, are really excited about that indoor projects building, so thank you for your support through the CTF, funds. That'll be really great for our, 4-Hers, so I just wanted to say thank you again for that. The visit to Wolf Spring Ranch was amazing.
Yeah, I'd like to
There-
hear about it.
Oh my gosh.
You been there yet, or is this the first
Yeah, I
time?
went October 3rd or
Did you?
4th, I can't remember.
Who all went?
It was an interesting contingency of CSU folks, some like bison researchers, and then there were some vet science folks, myself, grazing specialist from Extension in the region. Let's see, there were some NRCS folks from like the Trinidad office there, all just kind of looking at they have been inviting all kinds of people to advise on how to run this ranch, and so that was really exciting. They were looking at from water to, grazing, whether it's bison or cattle.
That's why Indian Nation was there,
Yep,
because of the
and
bison.
They said that it was close, Blanca Peak is really special to
I
their,
know that.
so it was in proximity, it was the largest
But
ranch.
they attended, I thought they were there with you, or you toured it.
Yeah, they purchased it.
Ah, got it.
Yes.
No,
Okay.
I thought they went to Wolf Spring.
They were there, yeah, they were there as well, and
Oh.
so that was really great, they laid out their plan. This will be the first time that they are not leasing out the land, they are actually actively managing it, and so they've got a lot of learning to do. They have a couple different sources of revenue, gravel, and then selling bison meat, and one other that I couldn't recall. And so it's really self-sufficient, and they're just learning a lot, as well as wanting to make it like an adult and youth learning center, and still run the bison facility and all that stuff, so.
So, point of clarification there. So, you toured the Navajo's property or BOCC,
Well, they
or
purchased,
all of it?
the Wolf Spring Ranch, and then the Boyd Ranch, they own both, or
The upper,
Boyer, sorry.
the north side of what
Navajo.
was,
So you toured the Navajo portion of that, because Wolf Springs technically isn't anymore, unless the Navajo's chosen to keep that name, which I don't know that, but.
The sign was still up,
Okay,
so,
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
don't know, that's all I got.
So the sign over the main entrance, that's BOCC Ranch.
Okay, yep.
I don't know that there is a main entrance into,
the sign,
It should be the Navajo Nation
where Wolf Springs with the elk is,
Big-
that's the
oh,
one
okay.
end of the Navajo Nation. BOCC has their own big sign up over there.
yeah,
ranch
over there
now.
on down
Further
further,
down,
but I
yeah.
thought the BOCC's headquarters was.
That's what I
built
thought originally
up.
too, but it's not.
Okay.
They moved it down.
So the Navajo Nation headquarters in the former Wolf Springs headquarters.
As far
Okay.
as-
So you didn't tour BOCC, it was the Navajo portion, the northern.
Correct.
Good, thank
Yes, so yeah.
you. Interesting.
Yeah, it was really great, and they were really excited about learning a lot. Talked about water, said water's very important, so make sure you guys understand what that's like. And they just seemed really, they're partnering with a bunch of different people to make sure that it's they're taking care of it the best way that they can. So yeah, it's really exciting. So, yeah.
Okay.
You got a grant.
Well, yeah, we had previously gotten some funding from the Mule Deer Foundation, and then they called me the other day and they were like, "Do you want some more?" And I was like, "I'll never say no to more money."
Exactly.
So they're really excited, and we're just working to figure out, is there how do we build this conservation program more? I would really like to do something in the summer for the youth, get them outside, and I know there's a few camps going on, but maybe can we tie them all together? Just working on all those finer details.
What do you have to do to qualify for it? They're expecting you to do something along the deer.
Yeah, their main interest is like
Preservation.
habitat and wildlife management. They did fund part of our shooting sports request, so
So they allow it to
ammunition
be spread
targets.
across some others.
We kind of correlated that, because that is, they want to promote.
Manage the habitat, you gotta shoot a deer once in a while.
Exactly, so correlating all of those pieces. So we're really excited, and, yeah, that was great. We did confirm our financial management strategies class will be at All Aboard West Cliff on January 16th. We will be getting, some money, I can't remember, CSU is providing some portion to cover food for that, and then farm credit. Yes, I always get that mixed up with Farm Bureau. I just ran into Lance the other day and he's like, we'll fund part of that, so we're looking at them maybe to just pay for the location, usage. So that worked out well. Our award ceremony was great. I think it went pretty well, and, I hope all the kids felt recognized, but I'm just really proud of them, and it was great to give them some more recognition, and our leaders too, because they volunteer. Yeah, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Just sprouted out of my head.
Thanks, Jay, I appreciate that. And then I'll just be out of the office. I'm gonna go on a plane to see my mom in Philadelphia.
All right.
That's it.
Good.
I can promise you I will not forge your signature. That's not happening, that's what we're laughing at.
Oh, why is that? Is it hilarious?
Well, your signature, yeah.
Well, sometimes it's really nice and you can read it, and then other times I was trying
I'd like
to
to
get
see
it to
try-
Kara
somebody
as soon
try
as
to
possible.
forge
Yeah, that's right. All right, well, thank you. Yeah, I thought your awards banquet was good, very good. So thank you for coming down. We appreciate that. Appreciate all you do.
I thought you guys were gonna take a 5-minute break. I had money on it, but
Oh, we're going to?
you surprised
We
me.
wait till the last person on the list gets up and we say sorry.
Oh, okay, okay. I lose my $5.
Who did you bet with? Good morning,
Virginia.
ma'am. How are you? How are you doing? Good. You good? Fine, thank you. Okay. I don't think we had it, did we?
This came in this morning.
I haven't looked this morning, so I'm a little behind sidewalk.
You wanna look at mine?
You have it memorized.
No, I don't.
But I don't think it's
Anything unusual that I didn't catch just looking at everything's under control? I'll move that we approve the treasurer's monthly report for the month of October 2019.
No, second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the treasurer's report for October 2019. Discussion. I'm trying to get it loaded into my board package.
Coming close
So
on your
I'm
balance.
Yeah, we're going to,
Closing down.
yeah, we're at 98.
Looks like it. Is it really? Cool.
Taxing sale the 22nd. That doesn't take before that.
Right.
Seemed like we got into a conversation yesterday I wanted to ask you about, and I can't remember what it was.
You can always come in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Further discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All in favor of approving the October Treasurer's Report, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Someday, I hope we get into some big, long, drawn-out, 20-minute conversation over your report. So far, it
Here's
hasn't.
how we'll do it.
Hasn't happened.
When I ask you every month, is there anything unusual that you ought to, and you're gonna say, yes, and
Yeah.
bring us to a line, and then we'll have that discussion. But so far, you don't do that.
They all freak out when that
All the
happens.
same.
Thank you, ma'am, yeah.
We'll screw up on purpose sometimes.
Yeah.
It's hard for Clint to screw up.
Okay, gentlemen, by consent, how about a 3-minute break? Maximum?
Good luck with that.
I guarantee you I will be back in 3
You're even
minutes.
gonna get the
All right?
room empty in 3 minutes.
Get a fritter or some croissants with it.
3 minutes, but it depends on if we can get out behind this table.
Smokers here. I said that's how smokers are.
It's been
California will be a ninth grade.
Well, are you gonna tell us what to plan? Cause I don't know. 12 sweet potato casseroles.
Whatever, usually what our family does.
One little thing, there's a little knowledge about, like,
My daughters are doing only 5.
More power to them.
Whatever you're used to, they bring their favorite side dishes. And I'll see if you can do that. I'm not doing this so that you can see what you signed up for.
Sorry you couldn't make your wonderful Oktoberfest.
I'm sorry,
Boy, was it spectacular.
Well,
It was
I'm gonna be
tremendous.
there elbow from bowling. And it's just now getting better. But we were out of town for, I knew you were. And we had to take her to the vet Monday. So that's why I missed Monday. Otherwise I would have been there.
well, we could have used you.
I hear Tina's sick.
Yeah, but that was
I'll be in. Whether you need me or not, I'll come hang out. So did you get your fingers drilled yet?
Yeah, I went down to Pueblo.
So how do you like it? Have you bowled
I
yet?
bowled last Monday.
That ball makes it different. So you got tired after that first time.
That's the only thing I've had.
We started to supply them with green chilies and burgers, and we're going to experiment with them, have a special day. And then if it works, then I'll go and start cooking my green chilies and have a green chili for
So how did it go today with the snow? Because I did come that day, that we were that far back, and nobody showed up, so I just figured they canceled down.
How's that new puppy doing? On the side, this is not a cow. I've got your chili put on there, it's not been, so I'll get a hold of you. The other one is Elmo. That's so easy to remember, right? There's the Mount Elmo over here. Oh yeah. Out in the snowstorm, you can't find it.
I know. You know, if you look at
Yeah, well, it was just really well done.
Oh, doesn't have to be all three of us. I never did hear a final on DD.
Well,
How you doing, lady?
We just legalized sports gambling.
Getting ready to build a dam?
Yes. Where's Oompa Loompa at? I wonder.
CCO.
no, but when you get this new table and he gets to join the big six, I'm gonna cut. I know, right?
Right along the edge. We're the top yellow as far as
No, we're waiting on
we're the top yellow. We're the top yellow as far
There's
No, we were doing about a year and a half we went down through about a year and a half.
Yeah.
He's here.
Call the meeting back to order. I'm assuming we all saw that cop just come in here, right?
Oh, yeah.
I just want you to know.
Pretty rowdy, so.
Okay, so,
We're making too much noise.
tell you, we have been yelled at in here when they have court right there. Oh, he comes in and gives us the business, yeah.
Let's raise their rent.
Yeah, that's right. All right, yeah, I apologize for the delay. We had invited Gary Hyde. If you do not know him, he is the road and bridge supervisor. We invited him to attend this meeting as well, or this portion of the meeting, and so we were waiting for him to get here. So that was why we kind of held off there for a few minutes. So appreciate your patience. Next item of business, gentlemen, is consideration of. Oh, thank you, ma'am. Yes. Is there any unfinished business to come before the board? I have none.
None from me.
Okay. Then we'll move on to new business. We will allow public comment on any items that will be voted on. And so we will start with the homeowners association's request considering the roads. We've asked council to do a little research. I think we'll start with you, sir, if you want to give us a briefing on what you have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna give you a short history of things.
Okay.
First of all, go to the Colorado Revised Statutes, 30-28-133.
Okay, hold it, sir.
30-28-133.
Okay.
That's the statute that talks about subdivision regulations. And just to paraphrase very briefly, every county that was actually where it was mandated that every county has to have a planning commission. And it went on to say the planning commission, shall develop, propose, and recommend subdivision regulations, and those regulations have to be in effect no later than September 1, 1972. So our subdivision regulations go back to 1972. All of the filings in Cuerno Verde were done after that, so they're all subject to the subdivision regulations. What we really need to look at more than anything else is our Custer County subdivision regulations. I don't know who all has this, but I'm just gonna go through the relevant parts in this, starting on, first of all, in definitions, I'm just gonna go through in page order.
Okay, can I make a point of order?
You may, sir, go ahead.
Do you have the 72 version of your plating?
I don't, of the plating?
Of your regulations for
Subdivision
plating, because
regulations.
that was what applied to the filings out there. And actually, to correct you, the first plat filing, and filing 1 was filed in June of 72, prior to what you've cited.
Okay, and what date was it accepted?
It was signed May, I believe June, by the county assessor's office, 1972. Plating, filing
Accepted
1.
June 6th and recorded, actually recorded before it was accepted.
Things are more efficient in the old days.
So what I'm asking you is, what were your zoning regulations or your developmental regulations in 1972? Because we can't talk about what you're doing today when you'd be talking about what you were doing 47 and a half years ago.
Well, we'll talk about what I would like to present to them.
Okay.
I asked Jackie Hobby if she could get me the date, or a copy of the original subdivision regulations, and I haven't heard from her. Kara, can you get a hold of Jackie? And I'm not sure if she even looked at my email yet, but I asked her to.
Okay.
I mean, if she has a copy of the original regulations, but I'm gonna assume that a lot of this is still the same for purposes
Well, I
of.
would rather we didn't assume.
Okay, well, hold on. Rod, you wanna grab a chair and come on in, sir?
I'd like to hear what council has to say.
Yeah, you really didn't have a point of order. That would be a parliamentary mistake. That's why I acknowledge you. That was more of a
Well,
question.
just so you guys know, I'm the president of the association.
Okay.
I have been designated to be the spokesman for the association.
All right.
So-
All right, do you have a copy?
What?
What you asked me if I had looked at.
No, I'm hoping the county has one, because we have nothing.
All right. Okay, go ahead, sir.
All right. The definitions, and I really doubt the definition has changed since the original one. The dedication on the plat, which is dedicating certain things for various kinds of use. A dedication can be the intentional appropriation or conveyance of land, or an interest in land. And what I'm going to be talking about here is that what was given to the county for roads is an interest in land, a right-of-way, not ownership of the roads. And I am going to guarantee that hasn't changed. There's a definition of open space. It describes open space that's areas of land or water which are essentially unimproved, devoted to preservation or management of natural resources, or for some uses. It says the term shall not include space devoted to streets. So streets are not considered as open spaces. And the reason I cite that is because it talks about later that open spaces, actually ownership of some of the open spaces is considered to be deeded to the county for certain purposes like schools and things like that. But that does not include roads. On page 11, subdivision roads. Roads may be either public or private and maintained subject to the specific dedication. There is no obligation for Custer County to own or maintain the roads. And I would assert that that has not changed either. Let me jump ahead to page 15. Open space is defined to be used as public or private recreation sites. And we're not talking about open spaces here, cause the next one is roads. The subdivider shall submit a road plan that defines and specifies the dimension of the dedicated rights of way, ownership status, and a maintenance plan for all roads created by the final plat. Ownership and maintenance statements shall be included on the final plat. The plat, and I pulled a couple of them real quick, there's I think 6 different filings there.
There is.
And I looked at a few of them, but the language is all the same in the dedications. The developer said that it would be the expense of the developer for all roads to be graded, gravelled, and provided with proper drainage, all to the satisfaction of the road commissioner. And on each of these plats that was recorded, the plat was approved by the Board of County Commissioners at various times since each filing was done separately. But that's all that was done. The plats were approved. There's no language where the Board of County Commissioners ever accepted any of the roads for maintenance. So after I read about roads, and on that same page, on page 15, it talks about easements and rights of way. The subdivider shall dedicate public and or private rights of way on the final plat. And I think this is where a lot of people are getting a little hung up on this. A right of way is an interest in land, it's not ownership of land. None of those roads have ownership has always remained with the subdivision.
I don't agree with that.
Okay.
We don't have title to those roads.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Can I listen to council, please?
So what we have is a right of way, and the terms easement and right of way are generally used interchangeably. There's maybe a slight difference in some instances, but it's a right of way for public use. A subdivision can decide they want the roads to be private, and that only the owners or guests of the owners can access the subdivision. But in Corno Verde, the roads were dedicated as public rights of way, and that's how they've always been. Page 18, approval of a subdivision shall not constitute an acceptance by the county for maintenance of the roads, streets, alleys, or other public lands as indicated for dedication on the plan.
Can we? We're not open for comment yet.
Not yet.
I'm still giving my legal opinion. The final plat should contain a separate statement certifying the BOCC's acceptance of dedicated property. Acceptance of public rights of way or public improvements does not imply acceptance for maintenance. I don't even see acceptance, I see approval. And maybe an argument can be made if they approved it, there's an implication they were accepting the rights of way, but that still doesn't mean they were accepting the roads for maintenance. So ownership of the roads there remains. There's one other thing I meant to read. Homeowners Association or Property Owners Association responsibilities. The subdivider shall institute an HOA or a POA or other comparable association which is responsible for maintaining and managing, and I'll skip down to the relevant part, roads, signs, and traffic control devices. So under the subdivision regulations, and we'll see whether this is the language from back then as well, but the HOA is responsible for maintenance, including doing the roads, signs, and traffic control devices. And I think there was one more part that I wanted to read. No, that's it. Okay, so having said that, what should have happened in the past is the county was going to accept roads for maintenance or agree to be responsible. I really think it should have been done by resolution. I had Gary look through his records and he couldn't find any evidence of any resolution, and I'm not sure. My guess is that Road and Bridge just sort of accepted you know, in certain cases, and I know they've done this in Corno Verde, there's a number of roads that they had been providing maintenance on for a long time. Gary actually provided me, and I'm sorry, I should have gotten a copy of this to you sooner. He had a map of the roads that they are maintaining, which is the vast majority of them, and I'll just pass this around to you. The ones in the red are the ones that county's been maintaining and receiving HUTF money for, and then there's a few that aren't being maintained by the county. I'm gathering that, or is Roger in here somewhere?
Which I was, while we're doing that, I wanted to you may or may not, I don't know Roger, but I want to introduce Roger Squire. He's the assistant road supervisor, been with the county road and bridge for
147
45 years. I'll be 46 when I hang it up.
Alright, so, and I've already introduced, I believe, Mr. Hyde, so.
Just a quick question, Clint, did you find, is that when the county accepts it, is there a criteria they have to meet in order to accept the road?
There are, yeah, it's all set forth in these subdivision regulations.
And
it says that the roads have to be done to the satisfaction of basically the road and bridge department.
So you all have a record or criteria that you adhere to when you turn it over, so there's a date that it was accepted, probably. Do we know? Okay.
Are there other subdivision, I'm assuming there are, where you maintain the roads as well, is that right?
There is, yes.
And that's, was that ever done by resolution to your knowledge, or was it just your decision to go ahead and do it?
No, it was always done by resolution when the commissioners accepted them, and they always had the final say.
Okay.
As to whether they were accepted or not.
So far, as far as these roads you're maintaining in Corno Verde, you're saying that you think there's a resolution for it, is that right?
Yeah, those were, approved by the Board of County Commissioners for acceptance for maintenance. And, unfortunately back then, they've changed their formula as far as receiving funds. The commissioners thought back then it was a great deal to accept these roads because they were paying, lane mileage. Back then, they were paying, oh golly, I gotta think back how that went. But anyway, at this point in time, if we accept a road, we don't get near the money that we got back then because of the formulas that HUTF has changed. And so yeah, whenever the roads were accepted, they were notified ahead of time that those roads had to be brought to county spec, which we do have a copy of county road specs. I didn't bring one, I'm not sure where they're at for sure. I think we've got some at the shop, and then there should be some on record here at the courthouse.
Okay.
Okay, and the other thing I wanted.
There was, excuse me, just 1 minute. There's one road in Corno Verde that we did accept after Jeff Hobby went in and brought it to county spec.
You know which road that was?
I do, that is, what's the one that Elsa lives on? Shoshone Drive.
And it shows that it shows on this document that that's a maintained road.
Yes, it is. And that one was not until such a time that Elsa and her husband built down there, and they, what do we need to do to bring this up to, for acceptance? And they hired Cliff, excuse me. They hired Cliff, Jeff worked for Cliff, on the side, but anyway. So yeah, that's the only road, that was not on the system that got accepted because they brought it up to county spec. And as far as I know, Elsa and her husband paid the biggest majority of the money to bring that road up to spec, so we would.
All right, to finish what I'm saying then, that absolutely the county does not own those roads. I don't know that the county owns any subdivision roads. The roads that the county may own are, it's property where the roads were there for a long time, and the roads are there by prescriptive easement. They were by use over a number of years, became county roads when the state sort of formalized the road situation in 1953, and roads that are existing back before then became county roads. I don't want to go into a long dissertation on that, but for the subdivisions, I'm assuming by the actions of Road and Bridge, and apparently by resolution, which we need maybe a better, do you think you could find anything on that?
I'll look and see.
All right, but assuming that there's a resolution, whether there is or not for these particular roads, we've been doing it. However, we have never taken ownership. There's only 4 ways that ownership can be conveyed. One is by a quitclaim deed, one is by a warranty deed, one is by a special warranty deed, which is just basically that, a special warranty deed, and one is called bargain and sale, which is very similar to a quitclaim deed. That's the only way property is conveyed. That has not happened for any of these roads. The fact that we have maintained them does not somehow make us owners of them. And the bottom line is that the county could also, if it decided by resolution, to discontinue maintaining roads in a subdivision if they felt that financially we could not afford to do it anymore. You could by resolution choose not to maintain these roads.
Okay. All right. I want to assure you that you will be heard either through your spokesman or individually, because we'll have public comment on this. Okay, we're just trying to go through a process here, so I'm not trying to ignore your deal. I'm sure you're aware we get into question and answer on everything, then we never do get through the whole process. So have faith. Gary, comments? Your perspective?
Well, I'm just going to listen to comments as we
Okay.
go along. I'd like to listen to the audience's comments, and then I'll submit something.
All right. Yeah, there were a couple roads on this map off of the list that are not maintained that I couldn't find, and so I don't know that that's a big deal, but
Will you allow us, we will have a conversation
Yeah.
about what you're not maintaining.
okay, yeah. So I want to make sure I got a grasp on why we're here. My assumption is that you feel like we should be maintaining roads in your subdivision that we are not currently maintaining. Is that a fair statement?
By the declaration documents, the filings, they were designated as public use roadways.
Okay, all right. And then I'm assuming you have a list of roads that you feel the county should be,
I
okay?
will share that with you.
And do you have roads that you feel the county should not be maintaining?
No.
Okay. So then it would be fair to assume that you feel, as a group, the county should maintain all the roads in that subdivision.
That's this discussion we're
Okay,
having.
all right,
Yeah.
okay, just trying to get the big
No, yep.
picture so I don't get muddled up in,
Understand.
in where we're at there. So, commissioners, opening comments? Or are we good to let Mr. Dugan, as you, and I was gonna ask this, if you had appointed a spokesperson, and obviously you informed us that you had, so.
I would like to learn more information before I even have a
Okay,
comment.
all right, good. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Vince.
And first, guys, please, we don't want this to be hostile. This doesn't need to be, we all live here, you know, and I'll tell you what, we appreciate what Gary and his folks and Roger do. I mean, their job is unbelievable. Personally, I don't feel that you have enough resources to do. I think you need more personnel, more equipment, and a lot more funding. And I think most of the people in this room will probably echo that.
Amen.
And if that meant more taxes in this county, I think a whole bunch of us would be willing to, once we saw a proposal, that we would be more than happy to give you some more dollars to do what you gotta do, cause it's unbelievable, and we appreciate it. Nobody looks out and sees a plow go by and say, oh, dang, they're going by again plowing. You know, they just don't do that. Or there goes the snow and I can get out. So,
You know,
please, we just wanna have a good
We
conversation.
just finished our budget hearings and we authorized Road and Bridge to expend the dollars to hire another
That's
FTE
great.
and buy another water
That's
truck.
fantastic.
So we're working on that.
So,
You're
making progress.
well made.
So if I could, I would like to, this is what, is currently, and I did this, so you guys know, after last week, after it snowed, you guys came out, plowed the roads. I said, wow. And then we started having this conversation. So after that, I went out and I said, just for my own curiosity, I wanted to see the roads that you guys plowed in Corona Verde. And this is the list of them. And I don't know how this marries up with what you're currently doing. The back we'll talk about, those are the ones that aren't being made. You asked the question, those are the ones that aren't being hit.
Okay.
The front list there is what was plowed last week. And take a look at that, make sure you agree.
Get a copy though.
I'm sorry, I did not. I made 6 copies of it.
You had, no, that's the wrong one.
So I don't know how that marries up with what is currently on you guys' map.
We only lack one.
Okay.
We've got 26 that we maintain.
Right.
And
You've
we
got 25.
Okay, so we're close.
So
We're close in the conversation, so that's good. And you know that's fantastic because this is probably 80 or 90% of the roads within Corona Verde.
Correct.
So, on the back side of this is what Mr. Flower asked about is what's not being maintained. And this is a list of the roads that are not being maintained. And what we did was we put the number of residents that are actually reside on those, whether they're full-time or part-time, and actually using the county assessor's tool to measure those roads. That's where I came up with this measurement. So it's not exact, it's an approximation.
Sure.
So that's the distance, and that first list there is the road of houses, the roads with houses and full-time residents, and it totals 1.92 miles.
Which we had estimated 2.2, so we're pretty close.
We're pretty close, and so that's great. That's great. And then the next list there is roads of houses with no full-time residents, and that's about 1.65 miles, and et cetera. You see, and the total distance of roads that we're talking about is about 4.14 miles approximately. So that's what, guys, we wanted to come talk to you about. I mean, we know you guys are maintaining these roads, and the homeowners, the property owners out here, and Gary and I think you guys saw Gary's email from March, that we had a conversation. Bill was on this initially, and and Gary came back and said, yeah, we're maintaining these roads except for these and stuff. You know, the position of the homeowners, and let's forget about ownership of roads and all of that. I mean, we could argue that till we're blue in the face when you get the lawyers all in here, et cetera. It's the maintenance of the roads that we're really talking about. And wanting to try to figure out how could we possibly, these other 4-point-something miles, could we look at getting them up to the county standard? What does that look like? Do they have to be brought up to the county standard, or could we just plow them and grade them? I mean, having that kind of conversation, you know, because a lot of the folks here feel they're paying taxes, they contribute road taxes. What you said, I think 5 mils of the county taxes, of a property tax goes to the road maintenance. And these owners are asking the question is, well, if we're paying taxes in the county, and evidently we're paying, and the HUF was all a new item to me, where you say that a portion of the gas tax comes back to the county to maintain roads. So there's a couple of questions here. One, the owners are asking, why can't we, if our taxes are being paid for road taxes, why can't the road in front of my house be included in that? And then if we're getting HUF money, and evidently I inferred from what you said that that was an application process to the state, or I don't know how that process works. I mean, totally ignorant.
Yeah.
So is there a possibility to go back and reapply for these other 4.1 miles and see if they could be covered in underneath that? Is there a way to approach that?
Okay.
So that's the conversation we want to have.
If you don't mind, I'd like to interject for just a second. But what you're requesting is a common question throughout the whole county.
Okay.
And
Yes.
I know that Bull Domingo would like to do the same thing, most likely.
But Bull Domingo's roads are designated as private roadways on their plats.
And then there's Cristo Vista.
Yeah.
And
I don't know what, I looked at Bull Domingo and I looked at the Dilly.
but what I'm afraid is if we do it for one, why we're going to have this question posed to us, why aren't we doing it for everybody? And then instead of our budget being what it is, it's going to have to be doubled in order to maintain everything that everybody wants.
Maybe it's time to have that conversation in the county. Well, and I know everybody's afraid of opening the door about the tax question. But you've got a large, and I'll tell you what, there's a bunch of our homeowners that are watching this today also. Because I had a bunch of people, how do I get this? I said, well, they stream it. And we sent out the email. So I know there's a resistance to tax, it's rare, nobody wants to pay more tax, but if you're getting a benefit from your taxes, and if there's a proposal put out that said, you know, we're gonna do this, X, Y, and Z, and I'm gonna tell you, I lived in Colorado Springs and I've seen this happen. And I don't know if any of you know Mary John Southers in Colorado Springs. When he got elected 4 or 5 years ago, he ran on a platform that he was gonna improve the roads in Colorado Springs, and he did it. He convinced the taxpayers to raise taxes. He collects us $50 million a year right now, and he just went back, and I don't know if it passed Tuesday, but he went back to them and asked them to do it for another 4 years. So if you convince the taxpayers on what you're gonna spend the money on and show them and tell them, there's a good chance that you may win that battle.
Yeah, I think you have some valid points. I don't think any of these commissioners will sit here and say, you guys are totally unreasonable. That's not the case. We all live on county roads.
I know you do.
We do you live in a subdivision? Okay. We don't live in a subdivision. So I think we feel your pain. We understand what you guys are saying. I don't think what you're saying is falling on deaf ears. And I know you realize too, what we're really talking about here is money. That's exactly what you were saying. So, we're faced in a couple of situations of this same thing, that we believe the county has a need and we know the county doesn't have the money. I can tell you from this chair, I have no intrepidation of asking the people of this county to spend tax money. They think we're tax mongers if we do that. No. How else are we gonna find out if people in this county want to pay for services? When I campaigned, I said, I know one thing going in this as a county commissioner. If you want anything different than you have right now, you're gonna have to pay for it. Because we are out of money. And I still believe that, that if we're gonna have a new justice center, if we're gonna have more chip seal roads, if we're gonna plow roads in subdivisions, if we're gonna maintain them, we're gonna have to have more money to do that. So I don't think that it's unreasonable for anybody to say, hey, you commissioners, you put this on the ballot, let's find out what the citizens wanna do. Now, that's all well and good. If the citizens say they don't wanna do that, then we're back to gnashing teeth. Roger, you were gonna say something, I'm sorry.
Yeah. We're talking tax stuff, just so you guys know up front, HUTEF is Highway Users Tax Fund. That is where approximately 85 to 90% of road and bridges money comes from. You guys' property tax, if road and bridge realizes $75 to $80 a year out of your property taxes, that kind of gives you guys an idea where we're going with this. HUTEF, keep driving, drive 500 miles a day, because that gasoline tax, that's what keeps road and bridges going in the state of Colorado.
But maybe we're not paying our fair share in the county.
Yeah,
Could be.
that's a possibility too. And good luck getting that one to go.
That's where it would have to come from.
But-
CDOT's not gonna raise their money with their hands. I mean,
See,
it's kind of like
but
Social
that's,
Security.
yeah, and that's a total tax, that's a total
Obviously
county
raise
tax,
that.
that, that doesn't break down to Cornell Verde, that doesn't break down to East Cliff, any of the other subdivisions. We do know for a fact that there are subdivisions that the roads are deeded to the county. Gary found that out in East Cliff, that his road is dedicated. And I know for a fact that Blue now and East Cliff were dedicated roads, deeded roads to the county. Now, if that didn't get put down, I don't know, but Gary found out that his is. So the other two, Antelope Valley was one of the first subdivisions in Custer County. Then I think we followed up maybe with Cornell Verde. There's several other ones, but they didn't even ask to be part of the county as far as roads were concerned. Hence, Bull Domingo, Beckwith Ranch, they're all private roads. They're gonna stay that way. We can't afford to take anything more on.
because, we don't have the money or the manpower to do it. So that's kind of been why we've hesitated taking any more roads on. We've never had to, the commissioners have never had to put a moratorium on accepting any roads, but we certainly are having a hard time keeping up with what we do have. And I know that we're not talking about a huge amount of roads left in Puerto Verde.
Right, 4 miles or so.
But by the same token, if we, you know, if you bring them on, guess what? You've gotta bring them up to county spec, and that's not up to Road and Bridge to bring that up. That's up to the homeowners association to bring those up to county spec. And Elsa knows that for a fact, because she did. Her and her husband
All right,
did.
let's freeze frame a second. Commissioner Kanda,
Yeah, I guess just to help
we'll
put
come right back to you.
a couple other things in perspective so that when we are talking about options, you can get a feel for things. Gary, how many road graders have we got?
We've got 7 up here.
How many dump trucks?
We've got 3 tandems.
3 tandems. And how many small trucks?
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh,
Those
you
are
mean
the
tandems,
small
I'm sorry.
Tandem, well, actually
okay.
4.
Gary maintains the mileage we have in the county. You can drive from here to Albuquerque. That's how many roads he maintains with that amount of equipment. And so we accept them very judiciously because, like you said, if you're paying taxes, I ought to have a road, I ought to have it maintained. You have to consider if a guy buys a piece of property on the side of a mountain and he's paying a tax in the county and he builds a road up there, that doesn't entitle him to that road to be maintained because it has to, first of all, meet some standards. Some of these roads you can't even do a switchback on. So you gotta get our equipment around the corners, widen them and et cetera. The other thing is you have to have the tax base to handle it. Because if we accept all the roads, what are we gonna get? We're gonna get a lot more complaints because you're not gonna get the plows out there as quick as you want to either. So it's a formula you have to use to accept things in a logical growth progression. And what we're trying to do right now is set up right with the money we have, we do not save money from year to year. We want to spend every dime we have that he's got. Now, you have to plan for emergencies, so you got to carry a few bucks in order to weather a few big storms or whatever. So it is, you know, and then through the time they've done a pretty good job because just recently we've had an exponential turn up in growth as opposed to kind of a steady growth over the last 50 years. You know, actually when Corona Verde came into being, when the first start of the major subdivisions started popping up in the valley. There were some little subdivisions like Tanglewood Acres and some clusters. Easier to maintain a road to them because they're all focused right in there and they're very small. But then if you look at it from a zoning point of view, they're only 100 feet apart from each other. In some cases, very dangerous fire mitigation issues, and so the zoning has evolved to accommodate all of that. So I feel your pain, and and by the way, even the roads, the Macy Lane that I live on, or Horn Road, the center of the roads, property goes to the center of the roads, and it's a right of way that the county has. They don't even own those roads. So it's a whole different ball game. So we got to look at some ideas, and we're not. And we've discussed mill levies. Because the road tax that Roger just pointed out isn't enough. And we do supplement that as we can. And if we make the right case and the populations, you gotta be sure you're judicious with what the case you're making, because if it's clustered, or not clustered, but more densely populated, it's a lot easier to convince people to pony up. If you're gonna pony up for 10 or 100 people that have roads that are 3 miles long and they're not paying any, you know, their increase in tax wouldn't even come close to covering the cost of part of it. So just wanted to get some kind of set the stage. It's confrontational. We don't need that.
Yeah, that's not what this is about.
So you made a good point. And Clint had some good issues on his definitions. So that's
okay.
Mine.
So let's go back, because I know you wanted to respond a little to Roger's comments.
Well, I still got questions, and I guess the piece we're talking about, the four roads, we're not looking about, here's the issue that we've got on a couple of those roads. And I'll use Kiowa Circle as an example that happened last winter. The owner couldn't get propane delivered to his house. The owner couldn't get trash pickup to his house. were putting people's lives in jeopardy. If they'd had a medical emergency out there, they couldn't have got an ambulance down that 3/8 of a mile house. And are we willing to accept journeying somebody out for a quarter to 3/8 of a mile in a blizzard that's injured? And you see what I'm talking about? We've got issues where we've got people living on these roads and we're not even plowing the snow off of them. And you know, you're taking the risk of jeopardizing property for houses freezing up because you don't have propane, etc. And I'm not trying to bring the oh me to Christ song. I'm just stating facts. This is actually what happened last winter. So
let me ask you a question, a couple questions, I guess. And I'm not asking you to inflame this group.
I don't want to be inflamed.
Does your homeowner association assess fees for your road maintenance currently?
There is nothing in our developing documents, our decree, our bylaws, our covenants that talk anything about. And the understanding from the association is that those roads were dedicated for public use. Therefore, we don't pay taxes on the roads. We pay taxes on our common areas. As Clint described, we have common areas that we pay taxes on. There's 280 odd acres at our clubhouse and different areas, and we pay taxes on that as the association. So, and that's why I was asking initially, and I wasn't trying to be confrontational with Clint. There's a question about what happened back in 1972, 1973, 1974. There was a development plan. The filings were filed. Evidently, the developer may have gone bankrupt. And like I said, I was 12 years old when all this was going on. I didn't live in the States, so I don't know what happened. I'm just trying to piece all of the pieces together.
If you want to get inflammatory, you keep bringing it.
So the question is that I have and the board has is, okay, well, let's say it was platted out. It was signed off by the county for development. What were the specifications that the roads are set? And it's good to know that their specifications and stuff. I give you my background. I worked for Colorado Springs for 10 years. That's where I retired to come here. I'm very familiar with the platting and development of this and how infrastructure is put in and stuff. I mean, there's specifications that are issued. You have to be, and we've talked about the road specs. You've mentioned those. So what were those road specs in 72? What was the developer told? You're going to build these roads to X width. They're going to have a crown on them. They're going to, whatever the ditches will be, whatever the bridges will carry so much of a tonnage. The culverts will be built to certain tonnage for carriage. So we're trying to find. We're not trying to be argumentative. And when I responded back to him, I don't have those documents. I don't know if the county has those documents. What were the specifications that were issued for the developer to meet? And where were the inspection points?
Right. Who determined that?
Who did he meet them or did he not? And what's the documentation that shows that? I mean, none of us were here when that happened, but that's the questions I have: is where are those documents and where does it show? I mean, you know better than anybody what happens in 4 or 5 years on a road that's not maintained. What happens on a road that's not been maintained for 47 years?
I witnessed it yesterday when I drove each and every one of them.
Yes. So I mean,
I was a little overwhelmed with what it would bring them up, what it would take to bring them up to council.
Some of them are really bad shape.
Yeah.
So that's a point I want to make, and again, please take it with how it's intended. The 4.14 miles of road in Cuerno Verde subdivision is a hell of a lot different than 4.1 miles of road on Hermack, as far as what we're talking about maintaining and all of this. So I don't want to downplay, well, it's only 4 miles of road. It is probably 4 miles of the most difficult roads, some of the most, okay, not the.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we all know that. I just want to put that out there, that we're not talking about 4 miles of straight, level road.
Some of them are flat. Pawnee's a nightmare.
Carwood Circle.
Yeah, Powell's Trail.
Powell's Trail is kind of windy and goes
and narrow and
that's what
on
we're
the north
talking
side, which makes it even worse.
That's kind of what we're talking about. Could we focus on the ones where people live? We don't have people living there now. Why waste the resources, the money? But you know, like Kiowa Circle, maybe develop a plan. I know Pawnee's a nightmare. Trying to get off and drop off of Whitehagle into that thing. You know, Mandan, we've got 2 houses. There's a new house being built on that. It's narrow, but could we grade it and then figure out a plan in the next 10 years or something to widen it and bring it to specs? I mean, that's kind of what we're asking for, guys. Is let's look in the future.
So when you ask for that, the plan would be developed by you guys or
Well,
us
no,
by
well-
them and funded by you guys?
Well, we're hoping you would fund it.
Well.
I mean, we're hoping we already help fund it.
Let me put the rest of the perspective. We only have a $7 million budget in the county, period.
Right.
And
Well,
we have to do everything.
Could you guys, let's develop a plan, let's see what, I mean, it's hypothetical, we don't know what we're talking here. I mean, if it's $5 million, I mean, it's, you know, that's probably not something the homeowner is gonna be able to chew on. But if it was, you know, if we developed a plan over 5 to 10 years, and all right, it was gonna cost this much to do Pawnee, and we could get some cost estimates, some budgetary numbers around that, and start planning and figuring out what that looked for, and we can come back out. These folks gotta make the decision. I'm like you, I work for these folks, so.
Yeah, so I'll get criticized for saying this. Politically, I look to you, sir. So we live in this county and we come up with a plan for Cuerno Verde over, let's call it a 5-year plan, and we're addressing these roads and we're making progress. Now politically, why is their subdivision any different than any other subdivision in the county that's not like a Bull Domingo private road? I don't think anybody's gonna argue that. They're gated and
Billy, some of, yeah, there's some of them out there.
so, what about these other subdivisions? How would that shake out?
As far as?
Doing the same thing for them.
Like Rosita Hills, or Rosita, for instance, I guess you don't consider that a subdivision, or is it a subdivision? It's not.
I don't.
Parts
think
of
so.
it are.
Parts of it are.
By saying that, they wouldn't have an argument. They wouldn't be able to come in here and request
Okay.
this. That's what I'd like to know, if there's any other subdivisions that have the potential to be able to come in here and do something.
So Cliff, right.
Well, that's one that was mentioned this
Antelope.
morning, Silver Cliff Ranch, that's actually still inside the Silver Cliff city
All
limits,
of
so, yeah, I think so.
Gary, that Antelope Valley, right, going out of Rosita up, but not the whole thing. That,
Where's this at, Bill?
Up there at the top of Junkins Park, and it goes off.
Yeah, we don't take care of it.
That's a really bad setup.
So,
I guess that's what I keep coming back to.
go ahead, ma'am.
May I ask, just 2 points of information. One goes back to what you said, none of our properties go to the center of the road. They all go to
That's how
Tim's
that was
within
set
our
up.
property. And then, in our roads, there are other subdivisions that use our roads as a pass-through, especially Choctaw and Whitehagle. So it's not specific just to Cuerno Verde.
True, and those roads are maintained heavily
Yeah.
to make up for that. I
They do a
believe
great
we
job
all
on
would
them.
agree to that.
And they're
right?
used
I mean,
heavily.
I've used them 100 times,
Yeah.
and I don't live anywhere near there.
And the only reason I bring that up is I wonder if way back when they first platted it out, it made a difference as far as whether or not there would be maintenance throughout the subdivision.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, yeah, and that,
Before my time.
your whole point makes me, not that you made it, but your subject matter, it just makes me tired because, now here we are, not you, here we are in 2019, trying to live and deal with what people did in 1970. That's what wears me out.
He makes a really good point. I was around in those days. I grew up here. And I remember when they set that in there. And that was a subdivision like Tanglewood Acre for people to come up in the summertime and have a cabin.
Right.
They didn't care about the roads. They liked the fact they were little trails, and they wanted them to be trails.
And they're in a transitional stage,
Sure,
I realize that.
absolutely.
We have been for a few years, and
So,
a lot of us like it here, we wanted to be here all along like you. But we didn't have that opportunity.
so I think
So we gotta adapt.
the real, go ahead, sir. You have been patient. If you have something to say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I agree with what you said in terms of, we need to have an understanding of what is the scope of the work, what will the cost be to bring the roads that you're referring to up to our standard? What's the ongoing cost of maintaining it once it gets up to standard, because those things are certainly different. And is the subdivision willing to, through an assessment or however you would be willing to do it, and I'm just putting this out on the table, assist the county in doing that? If the county took that task on, is there some way that the subdivision would help reimburse the county for that additional expense that it would take. First, we need to figure out, what are we talking
Yeah,
about?
we need to figure it out.
4.14 miles, when I first saw that number, I said, that's nothing. I mean, that's here to the end of the road. But then I remember, I know the roads.
Yeah.
They're terrible, it will take a lot.
Some of them
I
are.
don't mean call your roads terrible. They're gonna take a lot of work.
Some of them really are.
So, this 4.14 miles could be very, very expensive. We have a very limited budget. But I would like to know what the scope is of what it would take to get up to speed, what it would take to maintain it once we did, and what kind of contribution the homeowners association would be willing to make to maintain that. I mean, that just seems
Let me
reasonable.
caution you on one thing too, that Jay brought up, it's a good point. We can't, if you're thinking the county can build the roads and maintain the rest of the roads, that's a different story, because somebody has to bring them up to spec, so somebody has to build.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's gotta be
so
contracted
take
and
that- Well, that may be, that's what I'm wanting to make sure you realize,
Right.
because from a county point of view, we haven't got the manpower or the graders and enough things to do both jobs at the same
And
time.
this goes back to my original question, one of my original questions, I had several. But I'd like to see, were they ever accepted? I mean, and none of us know that answer here now.
That is a fair
I'm gonna
question.
go ahead and grab the plat maps, because when you actually come before a board to get a subdivision, and he's got the subdivision regs right there, on the maps, on the platted maps, there's an exception, and you gotta read the exception, and did you guys get those, and see if
Well,
the
I've looked at the
roads
plat
were-
maps, I mean, I've looked at the assessor's office, I've read all through all of those, but the question I'm asking, Jackie, that I think is still unanswered here is, like I say, there had to have been a specifications document issued by the county. You have to, as you develop this development, you have to build your roads to these specs. They have to be X, Y, Z.
Correct.
So
But not all subdivision roads are accepted.
well, that's what, was there
So
an
I'm gonna go
inspection?
pull the Corner Verde subdivision map.
Let's look at
And
those,
I'm gonna look
yeah.
at those.
All right.
The reason I gave you that is the list that I've got on there has the 2.41 miles that I drove the other day, and
Okay.
I got a cost estimate on that. And this is to do the bare minimum.
Okay.
And a lot of areas, they've got the trees grown up, so
Well,
the road is so pitched
that's
down.
one of the things that I've on the pilt that we want to talk with these gentlemen about is our CWPP, because yes, the fire chief has identified those as a fire risk, and that, but go ahead, Gary, I'm sorry.
But I'm thinking like $50,000 to $75,000 to do the bare minimum and give them.
Okay, and to where you guys would accept them?
Well, yeah.
Okay, I mean, that's not 5 million, so I mean, I'd have to talk with these people, and we would have to figure out whether we're willing to do a special assessment of 50 to 70, I mean, we're talking, well, right now, our annual dues are $90, that collects right short of 50,000, so we would have to do a $90 assessment on every owner to collect $50,000. So, because we've got 500 and, so you guys know, I don't know if you know how, we're 526 properties out there owned by 443 owners.
Yeah, I got it.
So,
yes, ma'am.
Elsa, I live on Shoshone Trail, so I got lucky because Elsa paid for the road.
Okay.
So, I'm not sure I'm gonna say something that's probably gonna get me beat up by everybody up there. So I inherited the
Decent road. You inherited a good road.
I inherited
Yeah.
the road
Got it.
that Elsa paid for.
Right.
So I'm not sure I agree to pay more money for, if people's moving onto a road that's not maintained, then they should know that, and they should know that they're going to have to accept that.
Okay.
well, that's another
Because I knew
conversation.
that when I moved here.
Right.
And my realtor told me that.
Yeah, and that's one, when I said I had a couple of questions that I didn't want to be inflammatory, that was one of the topics that I wanted to ask about. But,
Because Elsa paid quite a bit of money, and she knew that when she moved there.
right. So what we're gonna be cautious about is turning this into a homeowners meeting. I don't think.
No,
we're
you
gonna
don't, this
allow
is not
that.
the place for a homeowners meeting.
Yes.
I just have a couple of things that the commissioners want. Should think about, maybe Road and Bridge. But you know, maybe because Y cable is a thoroughfare through a couple of
Right.
additions. What is the cost effective about putting a different road base so you don't have to maintain it so often?
Well, we just got a
Yes.
good road base on it though.
Well, exactly.
That was good.
That's the best we got.
I
Just short
mean,
of chip.
pavement won't work
Give them
because of the
once per
weather.
mile, Gary.
One
I
at a
get
time,
this,
folks.
I get this supposed to be all the time as far as the cost to do chip seal and asphalt. Asphalt per mile, both lanes would run you about $120,000 to $130,000 for 1 mile.
Gotcha.
Big
I was
road.
just wondering because
Hey, hold on, just
I
a
don't
second.
know how many times you guys really come out during the year.
Hang on.
Hold on,
Well,
this
the thing
means,
of it
hold
is
on,
that-
this means we're stopping right here. I'll bang it louder if I need to, but I don't want to. I get it that you guys wanna have a conversation back there, but it's
I
not.
just asked him a question.
That's fine,
about the road.
I get it, and what I'm asking you is to hold off while somebody else is speaking, is that fair?
But,
Go ahead.
But what I was gonna say is I really enjoy being able to go down the chip seal road and know that we only have to touch that just.
Right.
But when you weigh what it costs to do the maintenance on a mile, $120,000 will go a long way as far as the
Right.
maintenance. And it's like I tell people, it's like buying a vehicle, you know. If we had the capital up front to go out and do a bunch of asphalt and things of that nature, like the chip seal roads, we would do it, but that's the thing, you know. Just like I can't afford to go out and hand over cash for a $75,000
Right.
pickup, you know, I have to make payments on it. And basically what we're doing with that money that is used to maintain that mile with the gravel and going out and blading it once in a while, it's a payment on that road versus
Okay.
paying for it up front with cash.
'Cause I know they're
So-
grading it today, Y cable they're grading, but the contractors that did the cable really tore up Shawnee Trail. Just the turn in from Y cable.
But back to what your question was as far as putting pavement on it. If we went with like a 2 or 3 inch layer asphalt, it would cost between $120,000 and $30,000.
Wow.
And then and chip seal would be for 1 new mile, if it's gravel right now, like Y cable is.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do 1 mile of that, it would be between $50,000 and $60,000. And then every 7 years, you've got to put a maintenance code on it, which continues to go up in cost. So in 7 years, when you put another maintenance code on it, it's probably going to cost you another $30,000.
Gotcha.
Give them the mag chloride
Okay,
first, too.
we're gonna go to the back, sir, you've been patient and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just have a question regarding the safety aspect, right? If we have owners that can't get out because they're snowed in, can't get services like propane that keeps their house warm. Part of this, I would like to see some kind of definition on ownership, and then based on that, what is our ability as individuals to plow ourselves out? Can we do that legally without stepping on toes and busting the road up? And
Yeah.
you know, what are we permitted to do on our own?
It's a great
outside of all this?
question. Now, let's go to Gary real quick and I'll come to you, sir. What do you think about that? They're
Yeah.
plowing their own road.
Yeah, I say if it's not maintained by us,
We're having to.
Knock yourself out.
knock yourself out basically, whatever you need to do. I mean,
Yeah.
if you wanna pay, have a contractor come in, put a little material on it, or have it.
Is it permissible?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, sir.
Well, I have a point of order about the declaration. I think we're getting distinguished between ownership of what the HOA really is. Because it was 1980 when the HOA was created by declaration, and is our entire documentation, which is recorded. There's no mention, and we have 3 titles. We own track B, track A, and track C. And that's it. That's the only thing that
Those are the
the
common
HOA
names.
owns. We have no other ownership. And in our documents, our declaration, there's no discussion of any roads being dedicated to the HOA. So the HOA itself, the subdivision may have, as the original developer, may have owned the roads, and may in fact the defunct now developer
Right.
theoretically may still own the roads. But where we are is neither, in that way, if that's the case, where it's good, my attitude is neither us nor the county owns the roads.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great point, and it's probably really pivotal to the long term. Once we get that salve put on that wound, then I think we can move forward. Jackie, come on in. I
Could
tried
I
to
circle
clear
back
this
and
up.
ask Gary one question?
Sure.
Can you help me break this down by roadway? Take this 50K and just kind of give me a rough what it would take for each road, maybe?
I've
Not
got
like
it.
now, but I mean sometime.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, I've got that on paper.
Okay, yeah, cause that would be, if we have this discussion, that was something that we would
And
need.
granted, this was all done in a matter of a few minutes.
It's
I
a rough,
drove to
it's a
one-
budgetary
yeah,
estimate, it's a ballpark.
Just so I can give you folks a
Yep.
general
I
idea.
get it.
Okay, so Jackie pulled these plat maps.
Yes.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. And of course, our subdivision regs have been redone in 2011. But we go by the subdivision regs that were in effect when this subdivision went through, and that's that nice colored one right here. They have been in Custer County since 2011. But what happens is different subdivisions get different approval. But everything that has to do with that subdivision is usually on the plat map because it has to be signed by the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners. And so what happens is the planning commission agreed, and Ben Kettle was the chairman of the planning commission, so he has to sign it, and so did the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners. Okay, so there's many filings in Quinta Verde, as we all know, but the filing one is the first subdivision map. So this is the stuff that goes with it. Has caused said tract to be platted into lots, streets, and easements as stated on the adjoining plat, which plat is drawn to fixed scale as indicated hereon, and accurately sets forth the boundary and the dimensions of said tract. Then we get to the streets. All streets so platted shall be dedicated to public use. Said streets, which are not yet constructed, shall at the expense of the Diversified Management Incorporated, be graded, gravelled, and provided with proper drainage, all to the satisfaction of the road commissioner of Custer County, Colorado.
But it doesn't say the road commissioner of Custer County, Colorado does that. It just says it needs to be done to his specs, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So the diversified management,
Right.
what roads
Which-
they didn't build had to be up to specs to
Okay.
the road and bridge at that time. But usually it says that the roads are dedicated to the county for ingress and egress, but it does not mean they're county maintained. On this document, the first one they filed, it does not specify that we will maintain the roads. All it's saying is that they had to be up to specs at the time of the road.
So point of clarification for y'all and Jackie. So dedicated public use, I'm asking this, well, I'll say it and then we can argue about it, does not mean county-owned roads. It means the public has a right to drive on that road. Doesn't matter who owns it. We in agreement with that? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's a vacation.
Yeah, thank you, dear. There's not a map left in your box. And you can thank me for that.
Probably been easier to go up there, Jackie.
Okay, now we're on filing 6. And it says the roads, Quinta Verde filing number 5, all streets so platted shall be dedicated to public use. Said streets which are not yet constructed at the expense of the Grammar Limited Corporation be graded, gravelled, and provided with proper drainage, all to the satisfaction of the road commissioner of Custer County. That alone tells me, this is my personal belief, that we want your roads in your subdivision to be a certain width with certain drainage, which gives the public ingress and egress into the subdivision, but it does not say that the county will maintain them.
Okay. So far, you're singing our song, baby. Don't take that serious.
I know. And this is a amendment. I wish you could. I don't know where that came from.
That's vacation.
Filing 4. Same verbiage as the other.
Yep.
Okay.
Been through this.
Agreed. All 5 of them, all 6 of them say pretty much the same thing.
Okay, so I
Council said
We
that.
will, we will agree with you on that.
Okay, so I could probably go find a subdivision that, maybe the one in, the subdivision Centennial Ranch.
I can tell you
That
that
would work.
when we were in Centennial Ranch, none of the roads were up to county specs. We wanted Centennial Ranch Road taken by the county. They said, you bring it up to county specs, but that does not guarantee that we will take it. And in fact, they did not right away. We spent tons of money and they did not take it right away.
Well, you can't use a 35-acre subdivision against a 5-acre subdivision.
And
A
remove.
We'll agree
35,
that these,
Yeah.
these say this. Now, but the question that follows this is, where were the inspection documents? Where was the follow-up? Where was the acceptance or the rejection? That's what the piece we're missing. Where was that?
Right.
that's where it was.
Well, it was more like. So, I mean, and we've all inherited that.
Right.
So you're going on, you gotta remember that when this was done, it was rural, everything was done on a handshake.
Yep.
So you're not gonna find any documentation, you're gonna, because there is not gonna be any documentation. Cause the gentleman that was the commissioner or the road boss probably didn't even type. He just did the roads, did his job, and I met with him.
But I mean, there's a statement in there that it will be done, so we all agree that it probably
So, Jackie,
wasn't done.
Well, one quick one. Even if it had been done, it had to be accepted by the county to maintain it, is the point.
Yes.
All this is proven so far is that you have to, in order to grant public access, the county was trying to guarantee there was some safe egress and ingress
Yep.
across all roads, and you can't keep the public out.
Yep.
That's the only point.
So, go ahead, Commissioner Prince.
The way I'm looking at this is, I've heard nothing to say that the county is obligated to bring your roads up to spec and then to maintain them. I have not heard a word that said that. And I don't understand why we would, unless we agreed to do that for every road in this county, which is something of course we cannot do.
If I may, go ahead, I'm sorry, Ben.
Wait a minute.
So my feeling is this is a subdivision issue, not a county issue at this point. And that's why I asked, what would it cost to get it up to speed? And are you willing to pay for it? If the answer is yes, whether a third-party company does it, I'm just throwing a name out, Cypher, for example. Whoever did it. Or the county did it, the county was reimbursed. I'm having a hard time understanding how this is becoming a county obligation when we have so limited funds. And I'm not trying to, please understand that
Well, that was,
I have to look at not your subdivision only, which is what you're concerned with, but I have to look at the entire county. And it would concern me immensely to set that precedent where we're saying, well, we're gonna add 4.14 miles to Corn Verde, and then someone else comes in and says, well, what about my road? And they go, well, yours isn't good enough, sorry, or whatever, you didn't have enough people in the room. And I don't mean this snippet in any way whatsoever. I have a concern, if we have an obligation, we will always commit our obligation. But it sounds to me like the obligation really lies with the subdivision, not with the county. And I'll defer to my fellow commissioners if they feel differently.
Let me respond to that, because sitting on this side of the table,
Happy to hear what you have to say.
I haven't seen the county prove that these roads weren't put into the specifications and that they should have been accepted 47.5 years ago.
Well,
There's a burden of proof there on the county side to prove that.
Well, I think she read.
She read the development documents, but then it says on that last sentence that the road commissioner, they would be installed to the road commissioner's standards and didn't say specifications, but
If
standards.
you're gonna put in your road, if you're gonna put in the road, this is what you must put in.
Yeah.
And we all agree with it, you can't put a little trail in.
You don't, yeah.
Right, it has to meet, if we're gonna allow the public to drive on it. This is what I'm hearing, that if you're gonna put a road in, you have to put it into
Okay.
the standards that we specify.
And that's what I understand this document is supposed to have
And
said.
that's what I heard counsel, and listen
Yeah.
very carefully. In fact, I stopped you from interrupting.
No,
so
I
could
know.
listen,
I understand.
and I didn't mean that rudely.
No, I didn't take it rudely,
Good.
no.
Okay, and I'm trying to wrap my mind around how can the county expend county funds to maintain the roads that the county is not obligated to do. And I'll defer to my fellow commissioners and say, have you heard anything different that I missed? Because I'm not all that bright, I get it.
No, you go back into the past, whether it's Jackie's handshake or whatever, a resolution had to have been passed, they had to have accepted it formally, and it ought to have a record of it. If there's no record, then it didn't happen. And all we can do is prove because I'll tell you, Kelly's got a vault of records that go clear back to the 1800s, and that's what people have been basing their proof of ownership, proof of whatever. So all we can do is go by that, and he's got whatever records he's got there, and I know for a fact that when they accepted roads, they accepted them to different standards at the time because trail work, because of a certain way they were doing it, and the county said, okay, I'll do this. So that's all we got. I haven't heard anything either, and I have heard, though, that we're willing to accept the road if you can show that it's up to spec and that we can, at the same time, accept it from a cost point of view, which means we're gonna have to look at whether there's one person at the end of 4 miles or whatever. There's a formula that we have to do and we'll agree to in the future.
I've got let's see, somebody was gonna, yes, sir, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman Flower. Maybe I can help out just a little bit. I want to clarify something through Clint. Clint, you read the state law regarding public right-of-way and public roads, and we all know that, if we drive down a public right-of-way and have a flat tire or something pull off the road, we're not trespassing anybody's property, we can fix it and go on. But I've never heard of a private entity such as an association or personal individuals having to, or even being able to, or supposed to take care of a public right-of-way. I don't know how that works. It seems to be something maybe that was done in the law that was, who's responsible for public right-of-way?
Right.
I mean, it seemed like some government entity, but that, I don't know.
The
Clint
roads
can
in the
clarify that.
subdivision only go to the lot lines. The other public roads in the county go generally, at least 60 feet wide, 30 feet from the center line, and they extend out beyond the actual roadway itself. They extend out another, 10, 15 feet on either side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you bring up a great point, and it's not confined to this room. I sat on a board and hundreds of thousands of dollars have been spent trying to determine just that. Who has the right, who has the responsibility to deal with any right-of-way, whether it's a utility right-of-way or a road right-of-way. I mean, we've had discussions about that in Silver Cliff Ranch. Who owns the property? Is it a right-of-way? Those aren't easy. They're certainly not questions I'm capable of answering, I can tell you that.
That's why I was asking Clint,
Yeah.
if there was the legal definition there of public right-of-way. Well, if it's public, that would seem to me a public building is taken care of by public money, such as a school or whatever.
Right.
So it would seem to me that if it's designated a public right-of-way, that some public entity
Right.
should be responsible for that. And I think that's what our board president here is trying to.
I've got a question I want to ask, and I'll get to you. If you had to quantify your concern, is it snow removal or road maintenance? Or both?
Yeah. I mean, in the winter it's snow removal.
Right.
In the summer it's road maintenance.
Go ahead, sir. And then
yeah, I've got a couple of comments, and I don't speak on behalf of Corona Verde. We have an interest in Corona Verde, excuse me, but we reside in a different subdivision that has this exact same challenge. And our dilemma is that in the case of a pass-through road in particular, we can't keep people out because it's a public right-of-way, and yet we have to pay to maintain it. And all it takes is one heavy construction truck to go through after a snowstorm when it has not been plowed, and they totally destroy the road. And yet we're responsible. So I'd like to see two things. I'd like to see the county take some responsibility in helping the public maintain the public right-of-ways where they can't control traffic coming and going, and it's not just residents. And two, I would like to see the county make a commitment, if we do bring the road up to their standards, that they will accept it from that point forward for plowing and for maintenance. Because what I'm hearing here today is that there's a standard but there's no guarantee if we bring our road up to that standard that you'll accept it for maintenance.
A great poignant point right there, probably of the morning, in my opinion. I would defer to these gentlemen, but I suspect I know what they're gonna say, so I won't speak on their behalf. But if a road is brought up to county standards, then I would think it's incumbent upon the county to deal with that road. Would you agree or disagree?
Come on, Gary, you're on the spot.
His seat
just got hot.
Yeah. Public road.
If it is a through road to go from one subdivision onto another area, whether it's in the subdivision or another public road, then I would agree with you. But if it's just a public road that terminates in a subdivision, just for the subdivision, I'm not sure I agree with the comment. So I think it really determines, I think your point was terrific, sir, but I think it really determines whether this is a road like Whitecable that goes through to another area. The public will use it not just for Greater Verde's use, but for any use in the county. Then it's a whole different animal than plowing someone's I have a mile driveway to my home. It is a private road. I pay to have it plowed. Whole different animal. I pay to maintain it. It's not a county road, but it terminates at my house. I mean, that I understand is different than if my road went right through to the other side of the mountain and it connected with another county road. Then it's a different story, because then the public drives on it.
But that's not why we're here, because we're already maintaining those through roads.
That's correct, and that's why.
See,
This gentleman back there is feeling that's not the case, and if it's not the case, then that needs to really come forward, because I feel much differently about that road if we're not maintaining it than I do about the gentleman who doesn't have ambulance service. And someone made the comment, and I have to agree with it, when you bought your home, you take on some responsibility to know how am I gonna get in and out in the winter? Is an ambulance gonna be able to come to me? That question should have been asked, should have been answered in terms of, I take some responsibility when I buy my home.
The question is being asked, and we're telling them no, and you're telling them no. So,
Well,
I guess the answer is no, the road is not maintained by anybody.
Well, and the point that he brings
no,
up is a very valid one, but it still requires a resolution. We have to accept it, and it has to be gone through the process to include possibly raising taxes to maintain them, because if we can't maintain them, what good does it do to take it over?
Well, that's, I asked
So
two
we
questions.
have to do it logically.
Yeah. I have two follow-ups, if I can, you're giving me a segue. One, I would like to ask, because we're all in agreement that you're doing 26 roads, I think you said out there? 25, 26 roads. Can we get those read into the records of today's meeting, that we are all in agreement that you guys are maintaining those roads? Is everybody agreeable to that? I mean, that way we got some documentation, at least today, that everybody agreed. Now, the other question is, and Tom made a great point here, if we go to the owners, and with your help figuring out what that's gonna cost us, and we do bring those up, or the owners agree to, yeah, we'll help pay for this, but then I'm hearing, well, we may not accept those, so we're gonna have to have an assurance up front, if we're gonna do the, well, you get it,
Sure. But that's a good point, but you can do that before anything.
Well, we would.
We
would
would
come
have to
back.
go through the process of
Yep.
deciding what criteria it is and whether we can accept it based on population and money that's available, or do we have to pass a new tax on everybody?
Yep.
And that brings up the homeowners thing. The whole county is in this picture. Homeowners, I had the same issues. Somebody says, well, I live at the front of the road, why do I have to pay for the whole road to be improved? That goes through, but from a county point of view, every taxpayer has to bear the burden of us accepting their roads. And so those are part of the criteria that we would look into before he just can't decide he's gonna accept the
we have
road.
another conversation about that, yes.
Sure. And you don't have to spend the money to get it fixed and lose the money knowing that we're not gonna accept
So
it.
that's what we'll do, if you guys will agree, we'll get with you, we'll figure out what that looks at, we'll talk with our members. If the members decide they wanna do that, we'll come back and have another conversation with you guys about.
I concur with that
Perfect.
completely.
Okay, well, let's do that.
If you as a homeowner association agree to, here's what we're willing to do before you spend the money.
Mhm.
Come to us
Oh,
and
yeah.
say, if we do this, will you do that? And we make a we pass a resolution agreeing to that.
Okay.
That is exactly the right way to handle it,
Alright.
in my personal opinion.
Well, let's do that. We'll have some more conversations with our folks and.
And understand, it takes more than just that. We have to look at the whole picture, and we gotta decide what that whole picture is yet,
Yeah.
to make that.
Okay, to stay on track, hold on just a second, ma'am. I'm going, oh, you're good? Okay, yes, ma'am.
I am, Clint, is reading those roads that are accepted into the record, would that, if there is no resolution that goes with that road, which takes precedence? Because if Kelly said she was going to go make sure she has all the resolutions for all the roads out there, and you read one into the record that is not represented by a resolution, which takes precedence?
Well, I thought that was
Just
the whole point.
legitimate
Very good
question.
point.
Well, do we have
We've gotta know what was resolved.
Well, I mean, on the roads you're maintaining now, if we all agree, would you guys do a resolution today to say, we're already maintaining these, let's make sure these, pass a resolution today that these roads are agreed that we're doing that.
Yeah, two different things in my book. We could read, if Gary acknowledges, we could read that the county is currently maintaining these roads.
Yeah.
That is a whole nother ballgame than saying we're gonna pass a resolution that say these are accepted, dedicated roads that the county has responsibility.
And we don't know legally whether he
We
should
don't
be
know that.
maintaining all of them anyway, cause you gotta go pull up the record to see if he's got them all been part of formally accepting it from the past.
You better not be maintaining roads that aren't
That's
accepted.
right. Go try not to do that.
So are we agreeing to have another,
don't.
are we agreeing to have another meeting on this? You guys will let us know when you get that so we can come back and.
Well, and that's really a good point, because maybe there are some roads we should not be maintaining, and we should be putting our efforts elsewhere.
Well, that's
I'm
a
just
good-
saying,
but
we're
that's
opening
true.
this can of worms.
That's
It's a
very
fair
true.
can of worms to look at all the roads. So
All
you
the
say-
county roads.
It's
Every
not applies
county
to
road, not
everybody.
just Corner Verde if you're gonna do that,
Well,
Jay.
that's exactly right.
Rest of them here in front of us.
Exactly right.
So
So you can't just hold us as the.
Right.
I wanna know the
We're
extent
gonna get out
of
of
the road,
subdivision
if
and
it's the right thing or not.
Well,
And I would be interested in knowing, then I'll come to you, ma'am. I would be interested in knowing the prioritization of these roads. Let's say that we came to this 5-year plan. Which 1, 2, 3, put a number on it, which roads are more important than the
that's
rest?
the flip
So-
side of what I gave you there. I mean, where,
People
if you
live.
got roads nobody lives on, why would you
Right.
focus on
Right,
those?
but I would like some direction from you guys to say, I mean, if this is it,
That's
if this is your
probably kind
prioritized
of our
list already, then
prioritized
I
list
understand I've got
today.
mine.
Is that in
Okay.
order of
Okay.
priority?
Pretty much.
Okay, all right. Yeah,
I mean,
it would make sense.
without concurring or.
So Ute Path,
or
whoever
with
lives
our-
on Ute Path is sucking wind, huh?
Well, Ute Path is about a .1
Yeah.
mile cul-de-sac.
Point oh.
Yeah.
No, it is
It's like, it's from here to across the street, so.
Yes, ma'am. And then,
Well, the roads, at the first of the year, the guys did a beautiful job, and it was just wonderful down YK going. But when all this construction started going, those guys fly down those roads. I really believe that we should, do something with speed limits and all that, cause those trailers and everything just tear them up.
let me address that real quick, so that you leave with at least some idea that we're trying.
Okay.
We just went through the budget process.
Yeah.
We budgeted a dollar amount for the sheriff's department to fund a traffic control officer on the county roads in this county for 2020. We believe there's a couple things at play. Increased traffic, we all know that. Unacceptable speeds, we all know that. Weather conditions severely affect road and bridges' ability to maintain a road. It has been so stinking dry, coming out of the winter, they were able to do a great job maintaining it because they had moisture in the ground to work with. Now all summer, look what we've been fighting.
Yeah.
And now I think, and Gary mentioned it yesterday in his staff report, that these roads are starting to get a little more user-friendly when it comes to road maintenance, just because of the moisture we've had.
A lot of water.
But we have dedicated some funds to try to slow these people down in this county, because we believe that in the long run is gonna help us maintain the quality of our roads once we do. So, your point is well taken, and we're trying, it's baby steps, but we're trying. I like the idea of a 5 to 10 year plan. Certainly, I'm not gonna subvert road and bridges policies and procedures and manners of operation. I think you all would agree it's reasonable that a road has to be to a certain standard before we can start maintaining. I don't think that's argumentative here. What that is, how that is, who pays for that, those are roadblocks we're gonna have to hurdle, I think. But I get the general sense that the Road and Bridge Department is willing, as I think the commissioners are, to sit and continue this conversation and try to come up with something. It would be irresponsible for us as elected officials to say, appreciate you guys coming, nothing we can do and nothing we want to do. I wouldn't be in this chair very long, I guarantee you, because my term is up next year, right? I mean, it's just not reasonable to think, not that I'm trying to vote to keep my job, but that's what we're here for, is to represent you guys.
Exactly right.
So that doesn't get lost either, yes.
One final question on that, if I could, please. Commissioner Prince, I heard you say that if we have a pass-through road, that's a different situation, and if it's not being maintained, that should come forth. We'd like very much to do that. What would that process look like?
It would look a lot like this, I would think.
Right.
Bring those roads to us,
How
get on the
what
agenda.
format? Do we get on the agenda
Yes,
for one of
sure.
these future meetings?
Yeah, Ms.
Bring that
Carroll,
to,
give you-
Before you do it, get the specs and know what you're talking about, so we can have a good.
And also, talk with Gary first, so Gary could come give us his perspective on the roads. If these are pass-through roads, if these are pass-through roads that go through a subdivision, that sounds to me like it ought to be a road that the county needs to consider maintaining.
And what road is this?
Yeah, do you have a road
This
name?
is Sundeck Drive.
I don't know that road.
Do you know where that's at?
Never even heard of it.
Across the
Where-
highway.
Yeah, I keep thinking that's the town of Westcliff, but it's not.
Across
It's
the highway
actually
from
county
Ace
property.
Hardware.
Where is it?
Across
Right
the
here.
highway from Ace Hardware.
Oh.
Oh, that one.
That says it all.
Yeah, you were kind of setting us up there.
Yeah, he was.
I was just gonna look it up, I don't need
No,
to,
but
so.
I really and truly, if it's a
Yeah.
public throughway,
Yeah, and
thoroughfare,
Yeah,
then I
that's
think it's something that the county needs to take a serious look at and determine whether
totally
it should be or shouldn't.
different perspective than Waikegel, so.
Right, now, one cable,
I
I
mean,
know for
I'm not
fact.
sure we can just say a through road's a through road.
Well, it's
And it
different
doesn't
than
matter if it
Waikegel,
is,
we give you
still gotta
that,
meet
but
the
it's
criteria.
also often used as a public easement, often used.
Yeah.
With, we'll bring it forward.
Okay, yeah, that's, I think,
Isn't Sundeck Road in Roger Camper's subdivision?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
X
Yes.
was, yes.
Yeah.
Ex subdivision?
which is now called the
Shining Mountain.
Shining Mountain subdivision, yeah.
Yeah, and that was
See,
the
and
same
I
thing.
just think, not to be argumentative, but I think now that's kind of a different cat to skin, based on the context of the conversation we were having about Waikegel, those types of roads. I'm not disagreeing that people don't use it as a through thoroughfare,
That's, okay, well, that's fair.
but
That's the
again,
same
your
general
question
safety-
is how
public
do
safety
you get that in
concerns.
front
But
of
it's
us?
still
and that's
legit, get it to us,
Right.
and there's criteria that you gotta consider before we can accept it.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
if it's up to road specs.
Tom, I just
Go ahead,
wanna-
okay, yes, Counselor.
I just had two things I wanted them to understand, that what the commissioners do by resolution, they can undo by resolution. So even if they decide they're gonna accept all of your roads, everything's brought up, and and we're gonna maintain them. If things go bad in the future, if Denver decides that all that HUTF money somehow should stay up there for the benefit of all the Californians that are moving to the
The first thing they do would be jack the prices of taxes up.
Yeah, but I mean, it's
Good.
possible that it's
Vote
not
to
always gonna be there, so I just.
Resolve.
That's right.
But the other thing I wanted them to understand, because this is the same thing we ran into in Blumenau, the developer actually still owns the land that those roads are on, you know, the actual dirt. And since the developer is, I mean, if you could find the developer and get a deed from the developer to the HOA, but you probably aren't gonna do that.
He's probably dead.
And unfortunately, and this is what they're doing right now in Blumenau, you have to do a quitclaim, a quiet title action, excuse me, a quiet title action,
And your HOA would need to do that. It's not something the county does. You would have to go and ask for a court decree giving actual ownership of the land, the dirt, to the HOA, so you're the owners. I mean, if those roads are vacated, the way it stands now under law, if those roads are vacated and abandoned, then all the property owners will pick up to the middle of the road. That'll become theirs. So I just wanted you to understand that that's where you're gonna have to go on ownership.
Okay.
Do you wanna set another date?
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's try to wrap this up. I'm not trying to shut anybody off, but we've hammered at it, you know, pretty good given our time frame here today. I would say that typically, if you wanna come back before the commission, you call and go through Kara or through one of us, and we will get that on an agenda item. If you wanna pick a date, we can strive towards that.
How long will it take to go back and research the resolutions and?
But you have it done by lunch, right?
Wow.
Both Gary and Kelly.
Yeah,
Gary already looked through his records.
As far as my records are pretty crude. I've got records on equipment. I don't have records on, honestly.
On agreements, you guys are shook hands on?
Exactly.
But at least we have a road supervisor who knows how to read and write and type now, right?
We're making
progress. 15 years progress.
What do you think, Kel? I mean, a month?
A
couple weeks?
Yeah, a couple weeks.
Okay.
Because I gotta go page by page.
Right, I understand.
and read,
It's gonna be
and
painful.
Yeah, it's gonna be.
Jackie, comment?
Another comment that I have is when a subdivision is brought forth through a county, it's brought forth through a planning commission. And so the planning commission sets up the subdivision rules. So you're approved on these rules of what roads will be maintained, what roads will be ingress and egress. So I'm just telling you that there might be some documents that you are going against a subdivision that was approved by a planning commission and a county commissioners.
It's true. We cannot approve it.
Correct.
So unless you're volunteering planning and zoning or the planning commission to do the research.
I will look for Quinniverti's subdivision and see exactly what it does say, so that we're all on the same footing to start out.
Do you think the 27th is reasonable of this month?
I think that's Thanksgiving.
Well,
That's
sorry.
the
He means the end of the month.
It's the day before.
It's
Wednesday.
I would
Their
say,
meeting
can I say one
There
thing?
is a meeting on the 27th.
Yeah, it's 3 weeks.
27th is a Wednesday.
Yeah.
In response to what Jackie said there, everything the planning commission did was all a recommendation to the commissioners. So once the commissioners approved the plat and whatever language is on there, everything was merged into that. There's not something separate from what the subdivision or the planning commission recommended. So I don't really think we need to look at what was discussed or what was recommended. It's what you actually.
What ended up on the plat.
Right.
I got off the hook, thank you.
Yeah, so the 27th, I thought, was our next commissioner meeting.
It is.
Correct.
Okay.
It's the end of the
So, you good
Better
with?
mid-month.
13th.
Yeah,
13th.
but
But
I think that's a little too
Yeah,
soon.
that's gonna hurt.
Or we
27th?
could defer till December.
Your call, whatever take you.
Typically,
I'm
our
not trying
end
to
of the
kill
month,
you guys.
yeah,
So.
our end of the month agenda gets jammed up because
You wanna
everybody
kick it
wants
into
to get their
December?
stuff
What?
done. Mid-month in December would probably be a little more reasonable.
Let's
but
do it.
Probably easier. As soon as you get ready, just call in and start finding out when we can get it on the calendar.
Well,
We
we're
can
gonna
work.
start
So
on
let's,
it.
you guys, yeah.
Yeah, with Kelly.
So let's do mid-December. Is that fair?
December 18th.
December
the
18th?
18th.
18th,
All
December
right,
18th.
that's
So, let's continue to call it consideration because then we would, if it's appropriate, have the ability to vote and not, violate our open sunshine laws, open meetings record act.
Are we gonna invite all of them to the?
Oh, you're always
the Christmas
invited.
party?
Oh, the Christmas party.
Okay.
When is your Christmas party?
Well, we're having a Thanksgiving party, not a Christmas party. You're invited. Come down, Thanksgiving
Cause
Day.
our Christmas party starts at noon that day on
Yeah.
December
On the-
18th.
On the 18th, oh, that's true. That's
So you gotta
true.
be done by noon.
Well, you got,
It's not gonna slow, so let's not worry about it.
We're not going up against an agenda. We've been dealing with this for 47 years. If we take a
Right.
couple of months,
Well, and
what's
then-
a couple of more months?
And then if maybe we leave it on the 18th and we say, okay, let's have a little status hearing, let's see where we're at. Maybe we don't have an answer, but at least we can touch base so it doesn't fall through the cracks. Consideration of Corona Verde Road, or consideration of the status of the road project. Okay. we're
Gentlemen,
good?
thank you.
You're
We
welcome.
appreciate the
You're welcome. Thank you
conversation.
guys for coming. So, not everybody, I guess almost everybody in here was about this item, but who is here for other things? Okay, we're gonna deal with that, I
Well,
think, and for the PILT funds, okay.
For Corona
So-
Verde, we're having a conversation about PILT, which will go into the fire mitigation
Right.
stuff. If you want to stay for that, that's the next conversation.
Yeah, and if you, and I would ask your indulgence, because there's a lady here that wants to bring up another topic to us. I don't know how long this PIP thing's gonna go.
Why don't we talk to her first?
My consent, gentlemen, yeah, I think we're good. You come forward.
Not you have to sit through PILT if you don't want to.
Unless you're after PIP, but I doubt it. Come forward, how are you?
Hi.
Tom Flower.
Kelly Smith.
Kelly, glad to meet you. We've met. Sorry,
Bill Campbell.
we have certainly met. I'm assuming you're still representing the chamber.
Yes.
Elsa, right behind you. Okay, hold on. No, I'm gonna. All right, what I would request is if you want to visit, you're welcome to stay, but if you want to visit, then I'm going to ask you to step out, please. Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Kelly Smith. I'm the president of the Chamber of Commerce. And I'm here to discuss the Visitor Center. As a nonprofit organization, it's difficult for us to maintain the support of the community, i.e. the Visitor Center, the Chamber, without the help of the local government.
Local government
Meaning
county or?
Well, we are the county visitor center, county chamber.
All right.
At the moment, the visitor center is solely being funded by the chamber with a small stipend coming from tourism, which I understand is you
We
guys.
pay that, yes.
That you pay that.
Yes.
We are trying to keep it open. We are trying to pay the bills. I am here to request, because you guys are already giving $150 a month, which comes in chunks versus monthly. Another $100 a month, make it $250 a month, or $3,000, which we've also asked from Westcliff, and we're planning on asking from Silvercliff, but their meetings were concurrent last night, in order to help support it. With the money, we're hoping perhaps we could hire 1 day a week a person to run the visitor center, as well as being our volunteer coordinator. Perhaps make a guide map, going by how much money we have, revamp the visitor center, do upkeep, maintenance, flowers, make the visitor center someplace people actually want to go. And so right now, everything is being done by the executive administrator of the chamber. We are having to pay her. We are paying all the utilities. We're paying everything.
Okay. Could you stand for a couple questions?
Yes.
Not stand literally, but. Is the visitor center and chamber's office one and the same?
At the moment, yes. And it has been, and the reason, the history behind that is at one time, I guess it wasn't, but when a few, 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, who knows what happened, I was in the community, everybody basically left. And it was up to the chamber to keep the visitor center going, or it would have ended.
Okay. Is it fair then, one quick question, then I'll defer, because it's a follow-up, that's okay. So, would it be fair for us, when you say visitor center, we think Chamber of Commerce. Or are those two separate things?
Right now, they're the same thing.
Okay.
However, the visitor center, at the moment being funded by the chamber, is 82 members, most of which have nothing to do with visiting, tourism, any of that. However, we represent the entire county. Somebody comes in or calls for information, we respond, whether it's about one of our members or not. If they want to know where to go get a pizza, we send them to Tony's, even though Tony's does not support us.
Hopefully you don't
So
send
it's
them
a
out in the county
no.
to get a pizza. 'Cause
So it's a community
you'd be in trouble.
thing. We try to keep everything local.
Well, it's even bigger. It's not Westcliff Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
It's not a
It's
Silver
the
Cliff Chamber.
county.
It's a county.
Okay, so let me, and I apologize, sir, but I wanna take exception to that right there. I don't believe that. The Chamber of Commerce is called Custer County Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
That does not mean it is part of this county's
That's what I was
organization.
asking.
Right, and we know it's not part of the
Okay.
governmental organization.
Right, that's what I'm talking about, the county government organization. Just because it has the county's name attached to it doesn't mean we're responsible.
Right,
for it. Okay.
and we
all right.
totally agree
Just
with
means
that.
you're trying to represent the county,
Sir, I am
but not.
interrupted.
I got you.
Right.
Okay, couple things. First, I'd like to just say that last night, the town of Westcliff agreed to fund $250 a month to help keep the visitor center open. The purpose is that as the visitor center is open, if you've been in there, and I have many times, there are brochures, there's all kinds of wonderful things. The tourism that is generated through that office comes back to the town and the county multi-times over in tax revenue for people using this. I think it would be, I want to use the word chandra, I'm not sure that's the correct word, would be a shame if that entity was no longer available for people coming to visit us. I recognize November through February is probably not your best time. The county is already funding $150 towards that, so you're really asking $100 more a month to help us, for us to be part of the entire community, Silver Cliff, Westcliff, and the county to keep this open.
Correct.
So with that comment, I'd like to move that we agree to fund
Sir, man, point of order, yeah, not that we agree, just make your motion.
I said it wrong.
Sorry.
I move that we take from our outreach fund $100 a month additionally to what's being paid to fund the visitor center on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. All second, so we can
Thank
talk
you.
about it.
Been moved and seconded that we subsidize the Chamber of Commerce in the amount of $100 per month to maintain the visitor center. Discussion.
So where is our 150 come from? Is it outreach?
Not 150.
No, I'm asking,
$100.
where is our original 150? Where
Oh.
is it being
The
built?
little part that's coming from there.
Oh.
What fund?
Tourism.
It's like community outreach. I thought.
Let me look.
The tourism pays you $500 a year, is that right?
No, they are paying us, $150 a
A
month
month, right.
as of about 6 or 8
Yeah.
months ago.
Right, it's, I'm looking, but I'm pretty sure it's in their budget.
That's
Comes
their
out of
tourism.
Yeah, it comes out of tourism, cause I've questioned about that.
Mhm.
Yeah, so if you'll give me just a second.
That's a logical place for it.
Yeah, and they have informed us, their job is to bring tourists here, and when they
And
get
you
them
need
here,
information when they get here.
we take over.
Yeah, you
But
can't
we
look
have no
up,
funds to take over.
can't look up tourism in the budget because it's listed as lodging.
There has been some speculation that I've heard, and it may just be hearsay, untrue lies, that the Chamber of Commerce is thinking that they may close their doors.
Right, and we
Is there
have
truth to
considered that for the last couple of years. This is to keep that from happening.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm on the lodging, that's why it's hard to find, because it's listed as lodging in our budget and not tourism. I believe it was the line item for other and visitor centers when they
That's
came
about
out of
it.
$3,600. So, I guess part of my discussion on this, and you did not include it in your motion, and I understand that, that's fine, some kind of a sunset thing. I don't believe it's the county's responsibility to maintain a chamber of commerce function. I get what they do, I'm very familiar with chamber work, been around it most of my adult life. I just don't think it's the county's responsibility to do that. However, I would support this, but I would like to say, and we may amend the motion to say through the end of 2020, and that's it. I don't know,
Well-
I'm just not real comfortable with this open-ended thing.
Let's talk, if you're talking amendments, then why wouldn't we? I think it belongs in the tourism budget personally, because that's a good place for it, and then have it in it. It's built up on tourism, it's on the people that coming in here. It helps get the information, you should be able to use that for your group. I'm happy trying to get up it in the near term, but why not consider that for the next 4 years' budget, be placed back into tourism and make sure we get behind it from that point of view, because I agree with you, Tom.
I disagree.
Okay.
I feel that it is a county function, along with everything else we, let me finish, please.
Yep.
I think it's a county function, like it is with everything else we do to help the citizens of this county. I think the way to help the citizens to raise as much tax revenue as we can without putting out additional taxes. I think if we have for such a nominal fee, if you've never been in there, you need to go in and see what they have. Okay, let me finish. I think that we have an obligation to support the different organizations within the county that will help bring additional tax revenues in. And I wholeheartedly support this.
And I was agreeing that it's a county function, but through tourism was my point. They work for us, it is a county function.
Have you had this discussion with tourism, sorry?
Yes.
You asked tourism about funding this?
Yes, and that's when we got the $150 a month.
No, I mean about the additional, your ask
No,
today
we
is
have
an
not gone
additional
to
$100 a
them
month?
for the additional,
Okay.
so.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, I'm not sure that really should come out of tourism. Tourism is supposed to spend their money outside the county.
That's true, that's just what I was looking for, the
True.
statute.
To bring them in.
But there is a couple exceptions, and one of them is housing for tourism. And that's why they're renting this building. I can look.
Yes, although tourism does not meet in the same building.
No, that's true. But they are basically renting space, correct, for their stuff. That's what we were told. If that's not the case, then we need to revisit that, but.
I hadn't thought of it in that term, but yes.
I will go ahead and I will agree with your, friendly amendment to amend the motion through 2020, and we could look at it again next year.
You can't fund it longer than that, really. It's gotta be brought up each year.
And that's why I agreed to do that, thank you. That's a good point.
So I'm gonna take that as a formal amendment, sir.
That's exactly
Is there a
what I
second?
tried to do.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to amend the motion by adding the words through the end of 2020. Discussion. Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of the amendment? Yes, ma'am, sorry. Oh, public comment, thank you. Public comment on the amendment specifically, yes.
Oh, on the
On the
amendment,
amendment.
sorry,
Yeah,
my
that's okay.
bad.
And I kind of set the stage for that yesterday. I apologized
My bad.
for that. Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote on the amendment, which is to include the wording through the end of 2020. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay, motion carries. Further discussion on the main motion, which now reads to fund the visitor center at $100 per month through the end of 2020. Discussion. I'm probably going to go along with this. I'll support this. I will do so with the caveat, I'm not sure it's our total responsibility to be doing this, but I'm certainly in tune to the idea that we all got to try to help together. I'll guarantee you, I will tell you this up front. My personal opinion is every one of your members needs to bear this, not the county. Further discussion?
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
And I'm not, but I know we've gone over and over this the last couple of meetings. This wasn't on the agenda.
That is correct.
Good point.
That is correct. Commissioner
Sorry.
Prince asked me about this early on. And you are absolutely right. So,
But we got
I'm gonna rule the
public
motion
here.
and it's, yeah, I'll rule the motion and its amendment out of order because of that very thing. That we are operating outside the scope of our agenda. I will take comment from either commissioner about that. I know where Commissioner Prince is headed.
Oh, I was headed back to Kara to put it on the
That's
next
right.
agenda because you are correct.
That's right.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah,
we-
it was an inappropriate
We need to do
motion.
that. I don't know how it slipped up. We don't normally do
It was a
that.
mistake,
Right.
and I will
That would be better than me ruling it out of order, to be honest with you.
I would like to withdraw it because of the error of not doing it during the correct protocol.
Would
I'm
you-
asked Kara,
would
she
you do
please
that?
put it on the next.
We could do that in the form of a motion, sir.
Okay, I move that I withdraw,
To withdraw.
to withdraw my motion.
Okay.
And
I'll second that motion. The second to your main motion does not need to have a second on the withdrawal. Anybody can do that. It's been moved and seconded to withdraw the motion and its pending amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed nay. Motion carries. Yeah, my apologies. Truly, we were trying to be sensitive to the fact that you had sat through that entire Corner Verde thing. It just got away from us. So yes.
And truly, if I may, we spoke last night. I suggested you come during public comment. I also suggested we probably will need to put this on in a meeting so that we can vote on it.
We just jumped the gun.
And
We jumped the gun on
I
it.
was inappropriate
Okay.
making that motion.
No problem. So Kara, we're on for,
The 13th?
okay,
Yes.
funding
have to
request
send
from
someone
the
else.
Chamber of Commerce, consideration of the funding request. So it should be fairly straightforward, because we've already
Okay.
hammered out a
And
lot of
honestly,
details.
I'm not sure you even need anybody here,
Okay,
but you're certainly welcome to in case any
Right.
questions come up.
okay, yes, I'll
Probably
be out of
makes
country,
sense.
but.
Oh, you yourself, I see.
She's gonna
I
be
got it.
traveling.
Okay. Yeah, it's up to you.
Okay,
Okay. It's
Right.
on the agenda, we will deal with or without representation from Chamber.
great, well, thank you guys.
You bet. And for the rest of the folks, apologize. We
Thanks a
went
lot.
off the rails on you. Thank you, ma'am. Okay,
Thank you, Kelly. Kelly, that way for us.
yeah. Next item on the agenda is a PILT funding request from Corner Verde. Spokesman?
You gentlemen need a break? It's been a tough day for you.
No, let's hammer on.
Let's get her done. I
Yeah,
gotta go here.
We're good.
I got Meredith with me here.
Yeah, so you're welcome to bring another
Is this my
chair.
hot seat here? Is this?
Okay, yes, please.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. I'm Matt Clark.
Matt, Tom Flower, we're sweet man in town. How
You
are you?
You don't want to be here? I'm sixth generation Colorado. You know, I live here in the county and I just moved here 4 years ago, but I got here as soon as I could.
From where?
From Colorado Springs. That's right.
California. Just kidding.
Yeah, California. Colorado.
Troublemaker.
Okay, so let's kind of set the stage. You're the spokesman for the homeowners association,
Absolutely.
okay? Talking about PILT, of course, PILT funding, payment in lieu of taxes. We have a document here. I need to dig mine back out.
You just have a proposal. I have one.
Yes, yeah, we've got it.
That's
Okay,
the notes of mine.
you have the floor, sir.
Okay. Well, this, I know it's on new business, but it's really kind of an old business
Right.
thing. We were actually here and introduced, when Cindy was here.
Yep.
So, the very day that Cindy, resigned is when she said, we had a valid CWPP
Right.
in place. Her suggestion, and Meredith, and by the way, we're glad that we have Meredith now. She's very familiar with this project that we've been working on for quite a while, and she's been great about championing this, coming forward with this. So, but this is about a 3-year project now, and this is something that just didn't happen overnight. But we got this developed, the feds and the state and the county and the fire protection district have all recognized this as valid, and they've been out there and seen it, and so looking at the TIL funds, they're very specific. They're very specific in what they're designed for, and so is our CWPP, and it lines right up with the fuel mitigation portion. Now, I can talk with you briefly about even a little bit of history of fire in our community, and simply that if you go back to the beginning of the Forest Service, all the way back to just our most recent fire over here at the Deckers, that environmental factors are fuel, weather, and topography. And we can't do a thing about any one of those except for the fuel.
And beetles.
And beetles, and which is part of the fuel also. And we've been working with that, so we work with the beetles also. So there's not a thing we can do except for attack those fuels. And that's what we've designed our CWPP to do, is attack that fuel, those excessive hazardous fuel models out there amongst our houses. So the proposal is easy. You know, we have identified very specifically in phases what we need out there to achieve this, and of course it exceeds. You know, our proposal and our analysis is quite expensive. Our proposal and our request is quite reasonable. Simply, it's focused directly on the fuel models within the homes that have participated within our subdivision. Let me talk briefly about what the values at risk are. And it's not just Cuerno Verde. Cuerno Verde has boundaries around it, which has Centennial Ranch, East Cliff, Antelope Valley, the airport, and we've had contact with all of them. They are included in this. Now, we're not trying to gather funds for them at this point. We're hoping that we'll get some partnership once we enact our CWPP, because they don't have one right now.
Now, you say they're in this.
They're only in the CWPP has been as our border. As you know, fire knows no barbed wire fences.
But they're not
Crossfire.
contributing.
No, they're not contributing right now, and we're not trying to gain funds.
So the Cuerno Verde CWPP is not limited to Cuerno Verde, as we know that.
We can expand.
Can and will, or
we're hoping that this will, if you'll excuse the term, spread like wildfire. So our purpose here.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get people involved, and so the CWPP, one of its primary focuses is education and awareness. So one of the first things we do is do an assessment on a house, and the State Forest Service typically does that, but they allowed me to do them because John Grieve was on my fire crew back in the 70s. So, I've been an incident management specialist for 40 years now retired.
Okay.
So,
go ahead, sir.
I have a couple questions. When I read your proposal, I kind of jotted down my questions. We gave you money last year, did we not?
No.
No.
No, we have not received any funds yet.
We've never given you funds? What kind of accountability will you have for any funds that you receive? How do we know that it's being used to clear the forests of tinder in there and that kind of thing, which is what I gleaned from what you wrote?
Guys, the procedure is we don't receive any money.
Right, so what would happen is, the process, I talked to Donna earlier, and what she recommended, because it would either be a reimbursement, situation where, Cuerno Verde would, give us the receipts and do through that and do a reimbursement, or the other is that it would be, billed, not to the county, but within that type of thing, we would do a voucher, go through that way.
To answer Jay's question, that falls on her.
It is.
That is your office that is
Yeah.
responsible
And
for
would
that.
your office also be responsible for verifying that in fact?
Right, so we would have to follow our purchasing policy as a county, do the RFP, do that whole process. And so, yes, the short answer, yeah.
So there's accountability.
Correct.
Yes, and there's oversight. Okay, I'm feeling much better.
Yeah, federal funds cannot interface with
Not that I,
private,
please
I
don't take that as
understand
in-
totally.
It's just we're spending money, I
Right.
wanna make sure it's being spent appropriately, and it has nothing to do with you, I just.
So let's,
And
That's what all
another,
those signatures are all about, you know, that's the accountability right there, it's federal,
So,
state.
even more so, I would have them sign the vouchers, along with my signature, so that it would be
Great.
that it was agreed upon on me and them that this was spent for this purpose, and it was
Right.
within
And it was actually done.
And as
Correct.
OEM, then it's your responsibility to represent the county to make sure the work is done and done appropriately and all of that, which.
You know, a lot of that falls on the contractor, the county needs to just make sure they're on their time schedule. It's kind of
Yeah,
how that works.
sorry. you-
got a quick one, yeah. Just so it's clear, cause it's not spelled out.
Right,
It's, you make, I mean, there's no argument about needing to do this.
I understand.
But it's how we do it. So, you know, you make a point, you're gonna put in 3 dry barrel cisterns and they're gonna cost $210,000.
Those, yeah.
So you're asking for $30,000. So what's the matching grant? Where's the 210? It's phase 2, it's 1 and 2.
No,
I mean,
so-
you're mixing apples and oranges. here.
Right, so from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong,
Right.
that's the scope of, in general, the project within the CWPP.
Over,
The community
Right,
wildfire
it's over
protection
some
plan.
life
I feel like we
Some
didn't
lifetime here,
define
phase
that
1 and 2.
Right.
And is this for and it says phase 2 is $30,000, but what is that? Is that the
It's in the
can't be
CWPP.
can't be the total
Read it.
amount.
Meredith was making a point, I really want to.
I feel like we didn't define what a CWPP is, Community Wildfire Protection Plan.
Right.
And so this is what opens up the avenue for the PIL funding for them, the payment in lieu of taxes. And so they just expounded on the criteria in 2018 to where you can create and carry out a CWPP now. And so this is within the last year available funds for this to happen. And so this is one part in their full scope of the CWPP that they want to, but they've narrowed down the houses that have, that were part of the assessments, that have been part of this process, and they're gonna do the extended, so there's 3 zones around a house, 4, something like that.
Yeah.
And so,
It's
it's
called
the
the
extended,
ignition zone.
right,
Mhm.
so extending that up. There's always projects beyond that to do in fire mitigation in general, but this is a great starting point in my opinion. There's other talks of, water sources and things like that, but in general, the best use of the funds in my opinion would.
Get on these.
So does the $30,000 buy the plan to get the PIL funding, or what is it?
So that would do the actual mitigation.
Okay.
So the plan's already done, that's all processed,
Alright,
and now it's
cool.
just the action of doing the
Yeah.
mitigation.
So Cuerna Verde is an interesting cat here because they're the only CWPP
As an HOA,
plan
correct.
as an HOA in this county.
Yeah.
Correct.
We have money, PILT money, dedicated for this kind of use. There's no matching grant, that money's sitting in an account.
Right.
If we vote, we're gonna dedicate that money to be
And
expended
another point on that is it has to be expended, in 2020.
2020.
Correct. And so obligated for a project in 2020, spent in total in 2021.
So I have a couple questions, on the $30,000 request. How many, I know you spoke about the number of residences up above that. How many residences do you think will be affected on this phase of the project?
60.
Well, those 60 would be, okay,
Yeah.
all right. So we had this similar thing in Silver Cliff Ranch last year through Cindy's work.
Okay.
I was up there, did a great job. Had a couple of little issues, nothing that really raised its head, but it was kind of, well, we bled over onto your property. We had tire tracks when we backed our little deal up and got over there, our skid steer or whatever.
broken window.
Yeah, broken window as it
Broken
turns
window.
out, yeah. So I'm assuming that the whole HOA is kind of on board with this, I think, as you have been historically for the last year or so, right? I mean, I think everybody's been all in on this deal. Do you foresee any pushback from any of your residents?
That's why we're focusing right now on the 60 that did raise their hand,
Okay.
just to have an assessment. So we're not,
Good.
we're not talking with the other people yet.
Right.
We're, like I said, we're hoping it spreads.
How'd you come up with the 30,000? Was that a guess? An
No,
estimate?
not a guess at all. As a
You
matter
got
of
enough
fact,
money to cover it?
yeah, most of the contractors, talking with contractors, we vetted about six
Good.
contractors locally and just out of the county's
Good.
area here in Fremont. Kind of where we're at. We're actually at a low base here at 2,000 per house. And, yeah, plus, but there's that 25% share, and that's, that expands that.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask you to speak to that. So
Yes.
your homeowners are coughing up.
That's right. They
They're
have
not
to-
just in
we
here
hope they
asking
will.
the commissioner. So,
You know, interestingly, our community's been well involved. You know, they haven't been sitting back in their recliner waiting for funding. You ought to see the piles out there. As a matter of fact, I can show you a picture of the piles that this older population
yeah,
is working on. They have totally gone after it. Unfortunately, they are older. They can only work on a lot of the smaller things right here. Here's some pictures of what the community's doing out there.
Big.
So there's 3 piles and they're all that long.
Didn't burn them yet, huh?
No,
They're in this
that's
snow.
gonna happen
Better
this
get
year.
after
We're
it.
working on that. Yeah, it's coming out. But it's a very
Actually,
active
it's seen
community
those.
and they're
We
really
have
getting after it.
443 actual owners of all of our lots. We have 180 developed houses.
196
More
houses.
Understand, yeah.
So just to give you an idea that the community's not sitting by
Right.
just waiting for this funding, you know, they're actually after it right now, they're getting after it. But it's an elderly
Let me ask
population.
a question, just because I'm a little confused. So $30,000 they're asking for, is that money available at this moment?
yes,
And is it available from the federal government?
Yeah, so,
it's been provided to us.
to us,
Is
so,
it in our bank
Yes.
account?
yeah,
Same kind
yes.
In that you can sign for it.
Right, so what the process would look like
We're not
is,
applying for it, we
No.
have it, is
we
what
have
you're
it,
trying to
there
get.
is a process for it to be spent. though.
Right.
Got it.
So each year, we have to give a, it's called certification. So we have to say what we spent the money on in the 3 areas that they've given us, the right to spend that money in. So, we do that, and then whenever so for SAR, right, that PILT funding, for their, training, that goes into the newspaper record to give a notice of what that money is being spent on. And there's a, public, report, 45 days,
45 days.
something like that, and then you can spend it. So it's a very simple process. There's 80 and some thousand left right now, after the 15,000 that was given to SAR, Search and Rescue.
I can't think of a better reason to spend money than fire mitigation. I would like to go ahead and move that we allocate $30,000 from PILT Fund to assist Puerto Verde in their mitigation process being overseen by our emergency management supervisor.
Okay, I'll second this. Go.
Been moved and seconded to authorize $30,000 out of the PILT fund for fire mitigation and the Corona Verde Homeowners Association.
You may have to add Title III PILT funding.
Yeah, Title III PILT funding. Thank you, ma'am. Perfect. Discussion.
Can we also add to the 45-day, public?
Yeah, that's,
Get an active
I guess,
meeting?
it's kind of
process.
a
So,
unspoken agreement that we'll
Yeah.
have to go through that process.
Sure.
I did it
Yeah,
with the search and rescue thing and probably asked Meredith to do that for this, but,
But we could do that.
cause there is a 45-day
45-day public
period of,
discussion,
and then
public
once that happens,
comment.
there's 2 things within this that I wanna kind of clear up in the wrap forward. The RFP, whose responsibility will that be?
I'm gonna say
Question.
yours.
Okay. Okay.
And I say that because you know more about it than I do.
It's a dangerous situation for us
Yeah.
all. I'm just kidding.
You know, I know Cindy talked about that also, you know, that, and a lot of this responsibility is gonna be on the contractor.
Yes.
You know, it really is,
Right.
it's on the contractor, it's not so much on the county or anything else. And
Right, but getting that
But he has,
contract.
he has to
Right.
get the documentation.
That
yeah.
Right,
process.
she is responsible for the
Yeah.
administrative,
I speak from where I'm sitting. Gentlemen,
Whatever you decide, I just wanted.
right,
It's
it makes sense to me
clear
that it
route.
should come out of the office of the
Did
emergency
before.
manager.
I think that's appropriate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Having been deeply involved in my prior life in RFPs, how does your RFP process go? Are you gonna advertise this to mitigation contractors across the state? Is it's advertised and, so we've gotta write a scope of work,
Mm-hmm.
liability,
Yep.
disclaimers, all of that,
Mhm.
and, okay.
And the
Just wanted to-
criteria within that, the scoring of, yeah, the whole.
And that work was all done on the
We've got it.
Silk Cliff Ranch
Right.
project.
Pretty good
Right.
template on
Yeah.
that.
There's already a template.
Okay, exactly.
All right,
Yes,
perfect, thank you.
This is just an aside for your information. We have 9 new homes, some considerably large homes going up in Cornbury right now. I've already spoken to 3 or 4 of the property owners, and they're ready as soon as they don't qualify now because they're not occupants.
Got it.
But the minute they're
They're all
occupants,
in.
they want to be involved in this too, because they have a considerable risk.
We expect it to spread, we really do, and the neighbors see not only what they've done, but how healthy it makes the forest.
Changes.
Yes.
And we hope they see, and the county coughed up some of this money.
Well, that's gonna be a motivator, I think.
Yeah,
with a lot of
75%, they probably would go,
Thank you,
oh.
guys.
So talk to us just real quick about the ignition zone. I know it's,
All right. Absolutely. The ignition zone is something that's recognized by the NFPA. The NFPA, of course, National Fire Protection Association. And what they've done is there's 3 zones within that ignition zone. And one of them is the immediate zone, which is right around your house, 5 feet. And that, they want that cleared totally of all combustible material. The second zone is called the intermediate zone, and that is 30 feet from the house. And that's just a reduction of the fuel and keeping it bunched. The third zone is the extended zones, and those are up to 200 feet from the home.
so and the reason I brought it up, because our house burned down in 2004, had nothing to do with mitigation of the forest, but tell you what it did have to do, and I know you guys are in tune with this, but that's why I brought it up on that. Close zone firewood. Some ashes, in my case, blew into a stack of firewood, which I was dumb enough to stack against my house, and it torched the whole thing. So I know that's part of it. It's just not, it's any combustible material, just not trees and bushes. That's the point I was just gonna.
Right, landscaping included, you know.
Right.
Those types of things. It's all addressed in the CWPP also as an educational piece for the community.
Within that, there's the Ready Set Go program is a great use for that, and so it's talking about how to structure hardening, so how to create a home that embers will not.
And we are doing that also when we do our architecture control, we really talk to the property owners about stucco's better than the siding and the whole gamut of those materials that have fire resistance.
Yeah.
Stucco, hard board, metal roofs.
Right. I now live in a stucco house. Thank you.
Yeah.
If I've got this on a flash drive, but I would encourage us commissioners to have a copy of this, because I would guess if we really made the effort, this would come down as a model across the state for homeowner associations. I mean, I realize that Cindy was very in tune to that, and she was a big proponent of your efforts out there. She really carried the torch for you, as does Meredith.
Yeah.
Any further discussion?
Just one other thing. Within that area, looking at it as a whole, and part of the whole foothills of the wet mountains and the areas, there's not a lot of fuel breaks over there.
Right.
And so this could be a start of the process within it. We've talked to U.S. Forest Service about this, the potential of all of this, and we're trying to be a little bit more whole community approach to our mitigation within just the valley in general, even more so within Custer County. And this is a great kind of stepping stone into that process. So, there's a lot of buy-in even outside of.
You know, we had this conversation particularly with Tanglewood Acres too, you know, when it comes down to it, and everybody's structures and lives are on the line with a limited resource that we know we're gonna have here initially, that fire department is gonna respond to the people that were responsible. And they're
The
gonna
life
take a
safety
quick
for
fly
a
over
main
your area and go, oh
presentation.
my God, we've got a chance to save this. We do not right down the road because it is absolutely overwhelmed, so.
Well, and on that vein, we have a conversation next week with the fire department, because we're ponying up money to help pay for that fire truck out at the airport.
Right, excellent, good.
We're
Okay.
going to their meeting next week.
Further discussion? Hearing none, public comment? Yes, sir. I was
ready.
Public comment, further public comment? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of authorizing $30,000 of PILT money to go to fire mitigation in the Corona Verde Homeowners Association, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Press on. Good job.
Appreciate it.
Nice. Good to have Matt, thanks for coming in. Yeah, I've got one right here. Road assessment. You want one that ready? Then you can stand. Here's it.
You're almost done. Oh, yeah, you're fine.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. Let's see what.
Doug, good job, sir. Mr. Doug.
Yeah.
Good job.
Guys, thank you. I appreciate your time, appreciate your honesty, and, we're all in this together, honestly.
I know why they picked you as their spokesman.
Well, I got the Barney in me.
Look at all these people here.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah,
You're
sure.
welcome.
Congratulations on the job, too.
We'll move on. Any public comment? Hearing none, gentlemen, anything else to come before the meeting?
I move we adjourn.
I'll second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? You did?
You whispered.
We're all done.
Motion carried. That's okay, we're done. Okay, you're good? Okay. All right.